dear listeners, drop in the comments right now how much money you got in your bank account. Let us know.
Don't forget to drop how much you get via direct deposit every 2 weeks.
Yeah, because that's going to be important in the coming days. Let us know how much you make in the comments publicly with your name attached.
Yes.
We need to know.
Give me your routing number and account number as well.
And it's not because we are reaching into your pocketbooks.
No. Well, unless you're subscribing to the Patreon.
Well, yeah, but that's more like you choosing to give it out. You know what I mean? And that's a public service, really.
100%, yeah.
It's not because we're reaching into your pocketbooks. It's because the government is going to be reaching into your pocketbooks.
That's right.
For most of you, well, for all of you that went to college, unless you were super wealthy and just paid for it outright, if you took out student loans, the government's coming for your bank account.
They're coming, and they're coming hard.
And not just in the typical way where it's like, oh, you owe debt, you got to pay this back.
Yeah.
They're going to forcibly take it.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just the regular, the American taxpayers are footing the bill for this, so it's a moral imperative that you pay your student loans. No, they're stealing from you.
Yeah, explicitly, that's what we're starting off with this week, because Trump's Department of Education just said they're going to be garnishing wages for student loan debt that is outstanding come summer 2025.
They are clawing back that money. And I think this is after, Joe Biden didn't do that for 4 years.
Yes.
So, effectively, people, got a little bit behind on some of these payments because COVID was a very hard time for student loan borrowers. And people who had degrees, especially people who were just starting out in fields, people who already can't afford to pay their student loans, a lot of people with a regular full-time job, particularly struggled after COVID. And so Joe Biden, in his attempts to do forgiveness that ultimately failed, and blah, 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 was way more lenient on actually recollecting those loans. He canceled interest on pandemic loans, canceled the interest rates on loans through the pandemic and whatnot. And some people fell into, forbearance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's it already takes, I think the average is 20 years to pay back the average student loan.
Which is insane.
Which is just an insane amount of money. People should not be burdened with this debt to begin with. The way that we deal with the cost of education, higher education, is totally fucking broken.
And they're paying hella interest on that debt.
And like you said, job market is terrible right now. Even if you get a super practical degree like in STEM or whatever, it's still really hard to find a high paying job that you can pay your student debt back with. The economy is totally trash right now. But even considering all of this, Trump's Department of Education is going to start garnishing your wages, meaning that if you aren't paying back your student loans, they're going to start just taking money out of what you get paid every 2 weeks to pay back that loan.
You, dear listener, are robbing me, the American taxpayer, by not paying your loan. Because it's morally dubious. It's immoral for the American taxpayer to pay for loans for education that goes to benefit the broader economy.
Yeah, well, of course. But this will be happening over the next several months. I think, what's her name? Linda McMahon, person who runs the Department of Education, who doesn't have an education degree, by the way. She lied about that in the past. She was speaking over this past week, basically saying that Joe Biden misled borrowers about debt or about student debt, his authority to waive student debt and that sort of thing. And importantly, in the message that she issued, she said, quote, "There will not be any mass loan forgiveness." We have completely swung back in the other direction.
Yep. Yeah.
Joe Biden did not do nearly enough to cancel student loan debt, but we were close in some ways.
There were significant groups of people that he did successfully cancel debt for.
Specifically for people who were scammed.
Yeah.
Or victims of fraud or something like that. But Joe Biden was fairly close, at least closer than any other politician has gotten, to canceling student loan debt for the 40 million people that have it. People who should not be in debt to this extent.
Yeah.
And now we've fully gone the other direction. The Trump administration wants to take money out of your paychecks to pay for the student loan debt that you shouldn't have to begin with.
Yeah, they're maliciously clawing all of that shit back. Yeah. It's insane. And it's kind of funny at the same time where they're defunding the IRS to the tune of I think estimates of saying that we're going to lose $500 billion in funding or some shit like that with all the IRS
only agency that makes money, by the way.
Only agency that brings money back to the government. Whatever, how the government makes money, they're just gutting. They decide we're going to get this money back from student loan borrowers. It's great.
Yeah. So if you got student loans like me, and you're going to be paying them back, well, I guess if you're not paying them back, if you don't have the money to pay them back, the government's going to get that money no matter what. Yeah. Literally making people poorer on purpose. You don't have to do this.
Quite literally taking money out of your paycheck.
Yeah. It's quite enough for your credit score to go down, for you to just have the debt hanging over your head, to make it difficult to, get a mortgage or something like that. You don't have to go and garnish the wages. There's already enough punitive measures in place.
It's not like crazy. Just liberals have student loan debt either, which is crazy.
It's everyone.
Everybody has student loan debt. And there are also conservatives in forbearance from that debt because of what happened after the pandemic. Crazy.
Yeah. I think in this article, 5 million borrowers are currently in default right now.
Yeah.
5 million people are in default right now out of like the 42 million.
Garnish the wages of 5 million people.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's just doing untold damage to the economy. So if you got student debt, lock in.
Lock in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody.
Welcome.
We're bringing you another episode talking about immigration, of course.
Yeah.
Classic, gotta talk about immigration. We're gonna be talking about birth rates today.
Immigration, birth rates, and Democrats.
Democrats, I love talking about Democrats.
I gotta love the Democrats.
I absolutely love the Democratic Party. I am a blue dog Democrat. But
Yes,
before we
sir.
get into all of that this week, of course, I will remind you to go and become a patron. If you're watching the video right now, this is the last time you're gonna be seeing this studio.
That's right.
We're about to tear down and set up in a new place.
Oh my God, it's a new era of Hiddo.
It's the Hiddo Renaissance. We're gonna be coming at you with 2 episodes a week starting next week for you all.
Yes.
Plan to record on Monday, but it might be a one last Sunday record. We'll work that out, but you're getting 2 episodes.
Yeah, you'll figure it out. Eventually, Sunday Supremacists, you will see something in your inbox on Sunday or Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I need to call on the community to figure out what the hell we're going to call the people who listen on Monday, Thursday, and Friday now.
Oh, true.
Oh, my goodness.
We're going to have to figure this out. This is of high importance.
Yes.
So start thinking, you all.
Start thinking. Come
Otherwise, we're in for some trouble. But if you want early access to all of those episodes that we will be producing for you, patreon.com/headintheofficepod. It is all available for you. You can get some Hiddo merch. You can get all of our stuff down in the description. Follow us, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. You know the deal.
You know exactly what to do.
Now.
We are garnishing your wages for Patreon.
Exactly.
We are garnishing your Patreon subscription.
If your card declines when trying to pay for Patreon, we are garnishing your wages so that we can fund our little setup here. Because if we can't, then democracy dies without Hiddo.
It's coming. It's coming right off your W-2 after tax too. It's not even a pre-tax deduction.
Yeah, so make sure you become a patron, get early access to all of that. And also, we do have a winner for the art contest. We will be revealing that to the public once we get the full piece hung up in the studio, which might take a week or 2.
It's a good piece.
But,
it's a good piece, everybody.
If you submitted your art, watch your email because you might have won.
I'm happy with the results is all I'll say.
Exactly. It was a very good result. Thank you all for voting and participating, and thank you all for getting us to this point.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
We couldn't do it without you. I have quite a bit of sheer grit and determination. Mm-hmm. Well, we couldn't do it without you.
Exactly. In my most humble assessment, we
absolutely
we are wonderful, but you're also a part of it as our non-parasocial friends.
Absolutely. And one last way you can support the show before we get into the news here is by leaving a 5-star review on Apple. Of course, how many do we got today? I'm counting many.
We got like 6, I think.
I'm trying to find which one did we read. Did we only have one last week?
We had a couple last week, I think.
Okay, I think we're starting with MN born IA trapped. Minnesota born Iowa trapped. Is that what that means?
Oh shit, that's probably what
we're starting with.
And then I think we end at instant wreck.
Okay. So this one starts with subject line, definitely not from a Signal group chat. They say, of course, I must begin by saying I strongly, robustly even condemn Hamas and any and all acts of political violence. From a Wednesday weenie who found Hiddo on TikTok and became hooked. These guys are awesome. I'm a trans mask lesbian living in the absolute hellhole that is Iowa. You know, the state that recently passed the Civil Rights Removal Act. Like, for real, y'all weren't clued into the name, but that you shouldn't vote for this. And it's so unbelievably refreshing to hear 2 Midwest guys my age with similar political beliefs as me just yap about politics over an hour. Jeremy and Gage make the absolute horrors of the current news cycle less scary with their easy humor. The phrase "this goes crazy if you're stupid" has definitely made its way into my vocabulary.
Let's go.
In addition to their top tier rapport, the Podjohns wish they were doing it like Hiddo. Every story is well researched and well presented, which is what makes this the #1 and only geopolitical podcast. And we will be restaking our claim to #1 geopolitical podcast this episode. By the way, needless to say, my non-parasocial besties are doing excellent work and deserve every single 5-star rating. P.S. to Cash Patel, these white boys with podcast mics have not indoctrinated me in any way whatsoever. I pinky promise. Please don't be mean to them. K, thanks, Pookie.
Yes. Very important. That's a very important addendum that I think we might have the beginning of these reviews start with the typical condemnations, but at the end, very much a reaffirmation that we have not in any way influenced your political views.
We don't do that.
We don't do that.
That's not what this operation is.
I simply report the news in a bipartisan fashion.
Absolutely.
This next review These boys are Certified Hood Classics by Red Medic ATX. Obligatory disclaimer, I condemn Hamas and all forms of political violence. Very important. I've been listening to Jeremy and Gage for years now. Their thoughtful insight into domestic and geopolitics as the world's #1 geopolitical podcast have helped keep me sane. I will be upgrading to a Sunday supremacist once my wife and I pay off our credit card and student loan. Hopefully this summer. Hopefully you're ahead on those ones. Hopefully this summer or fall. I'm praying for you. Even though I am just a Wednesday weenie, I've been a Hiddo evangelist, introducing my wife, siblings, friends, and numerous coworkers to the base takes and certified hood classics coming straight from the mouth of these two beautiful boys. My wife also loves you boys and says that Gage sounds like a young, childish Gambino. What can I say? What can I say? I'm a 28-year-old paramedic supervisor, wildland firefighter, and SWAT medic, parentheses, not a cop, I don't carry a gun, and I'm there for any person who gets hurt. I felt like that needed to be clarified. In this line of work, almost all the firefighters, cops, and older EMTs and paramedics that I work with have conservative or even worse, lukewarm liberal viewpoints. The only thing that gives me hope is that my coworkers that are younger than me tend to share my radical left lunatic views and at least don't openly complain when I force them to listen to the boys while we're working on the ambulance together.
Real.
Based as hell.
Real.
Knowing that there are other cishet white guys who refuse to fall down the all-right pipeline and continue to push back against the march toward fascism maintains my faith in humanity. Having grown up in West Texas but escaped to Colorado 3.5 years ago, these boys have helped me undo all of the libertarian and conservative brainwashing. Jeremy and Gage have provided me the ammunition to win the political arguments with my MAGA parents and grandparents thanks to their holiday pregame episodes. I would have to say this is entirely, that paragraph is entirely figurative. To the listeners who are having a hard time with their mental health in these insane times, remember, sometimes the most radical thing you can do is keep living. The horrors persist, but so do you. Your favorite Marxist communist paramedic, Austin.
Yeah, I think this was entirely satirical.
Entirely satirical.
This was not meant to be taken seriously.
We did not in any way influence Austin's political views. No way, shape, or form.
Yeah, no, they're actually not even familiar with our content.
Yeah, no, they got no idea what's going on.
This next one from Guy Who Invented Fire. Worth their weight in eggs. Damn, that's a compliment right there. Wonderful podcast, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Really helps me refine my political opinions and come to terms with being a leftist who despises the Democratic Party, as you should, honestly.
Yes.
I remember the day I found this podcast when the pink sugar elephants came to me in dreams and danced through my ears, singing tales of rising and raising of an empire long forgotten, and of the cosmic demon sure to defile the souls of the most vulnerable among us. In the frenzy of this encroachment upon my very sanity, I called out, I beseech you, O whisperers in the dark, how may I decipher this wicked web you've spun, preferably non-parasocially? And they dutifully replied, rejoice, for you have been lucky to walk the plain with practitioners of truth and reason. Behold, with thine most eager ears the gospel of Hiddo, the geopolitical gentleman shall most certainly keep the knocking madness at bay. And it was then I awoke, desperate to seize the means and for the load of white hot audio goodness that is the illustrious Head in the Office podcast. Or maybe I found them because of the gay nutcracker clip on Insta. Who could recall? Anyway, I condemn everything except for this podcast. XOXO.
I've been saying that.
Yeah,
I've been saying that. Worth your weight in eggs. What a killer compliment.
That's
right
good.
There.
That's real good.
Oh my goodness. Killer compliments. This next one, Killer Podcast by Sound Logic. Let me start by saying that I condemn Hamas as well as all political violence. The quality of research that goes into this podcast is only superseded by their ability to articulate in a relatable way. Working in construction, I hear all sorts of right-wing nonsense. Having these guys distill the news so I don't have to raw dog it and react with proper outrage is so validating. Great to know there's another generation of political junkies taking the stage.
And we got listeners using words like superseded.
I'm saying, yeah.
We got a smart listening base. That's
most
crazy.
intelligent base, let me tell you.
Nah, this last review here from Grumpy Queer, they say the only cis boys I need in my life. I've been listening to these boys for I don't even know how long now. Accurate, humble, and the best political podcast to exist. That's right.
Yes.
And I say that. That means we're humble.
Yeah, and we're super humble. We've entwined our souls with yours. That's why you can't remember anymore.
Well, all before me have failed due to their hubris, but I'm different.
100%. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly.
Who were smaller than they thought thought they were, but I'm the tallest.
Exactly. Once I started listening to them, I couldn't get enough and had to go back to listen to every single episode. Being an AFAB queer working in construction and manufacturing, they've helped me keep my sanity and not be a complete doomer about our overall political climate. Hopefully I won't get into trouble writing this review on my work phone, and of course I condemn political violence. Can't wait for 2 episodes a week to make my commute to and from work so much better. Keep up the good work. While I was reading that, I was imagining a construction worker with the hard hat and AirPods in listening to Hiddo.
Hell yeah.
I think I want to keep that image, though.
That's kind of gas.
It's not a commute podcast. It's a work podcast.
Exactly.
Just like I imagined the paramedic showing
Austin
up listening
in an
to
ambulance.
Hiddo. Yeah,
He's got they got a patient, like coding or whatever the fuck in the middle of the ambulance. They're pumping CPR and this guy trying to save his life, and we got, and let's just lock in.
This shit's so fucking stupid.
This goes hard if you're stupid. And then he wakes. And then he wakes and
because
he realizes, oh my goodness. Wow.
There's a divine
Here's the
nature.
voice. Did we hit Instant Wreck by Davis and Norris last week?
Maybe not.
Why not hit it again, just in case? Aside from, like me, disavowing and condemning all forms of political violence, these two research well, present their information well, and get angry at the same things I do. What's not to like? The Midwest is in good hands with these white boys keeping an eye on things at home and abroad.
That's right.
Heavy on the abroad, as always. And with that, I think it's time to get in the news coverage.
Absolutely time to get in the news. As we said this week, we'll be talking about natalism a little bit. We'll be talking about geopolitics, restaking our claim there. We'll be talking about Democrats doing absolutely nothing.
Yep.
We'll be talking about, there's some extras in here too, another KEGseth leak.
God, I
got to talk about that.
Can't believe there was another KEGseth leak.
It's
whatever.
It's diabolical. But first, of course, we will start off talking about immigration. It is one of the biggest political issues nowadays, unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And we got to talk about it.
And, you know, just throwing a jab out in the middle, in the beginning of the episode that you'll understand towards the end of the episode, I'm doing my job and actually talking about the issue affirmatively right now and making it a priority.
Yeah, it's good to get perspective when we talk about things like immigration. I just bought this book by, I think his name is Jonathan Washington. The book's called The Case for Open Borders.
Okay.
And I just started skimming it. Towards the back of the book, he's got just like 20 affirmative arguments for open borders. And the first one is that like shit hasn't always been this way. The border has not been this like tightly secured, and it has never been this much of a political issue.
Yeah.
And previously, both parties were very open to having immigrants coming over. And the only people that were really this against it was, of course, like the white supremacist factions who wanted to, you know, maintain purity in the country or fucking whatever, or make sure they're not a minority. So this is a contemporary issue that requires, I think, as you said, positive affirmations in terms of arguing in favor of immigrants being able to live here.
I think it's a mistake, spoiler, to be reluctantly arguing for what we're going to be talking about.
Yes.
Fucking crazy, man.
So we're going to start off talking about Trump's interview with Time Magazine because, you know, we've been saying for a while, still first 100 days, but that's not going to apply come like, what, April 30 or something like that.
28th, I think, right?
April 20. Okay, so yeah, we're coming right up on the 100-day mark. So time of recording this, we're still within the first 100 days, but by the time this episode comes out, we'll be past Trump's first 100 days. And to sort of demarcate this milestone, he did a interview with Time Magazine. The video hasn't been released. I don't know if it will, but they released a transcript.
Okay.
And so there's some portions I want to go through in here. There was an exchange specifically about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and I want to read that to you. So the reporter asked Trump, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that you have to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. You haven't done so. Are you disobeying the Supreme Court? Trump responds, well, that's not what my people told me. They didn't say it was. They said it was the 9-0 was something entirely different. The reporter says, let me quote the ruling. Quote, the order properly requires the government to facilitate Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador. Are you facilitating his release? And Trump finally says, I leave that to my lawyers. I give them no instructions. They feel that the order says something very much different from what you're saying, but I leave that to my lawyers. If they want, and that would be the Attorney General of the United States and the people that represent the country, I don't make that decision.
Buddy, you make all of the decisions. I think that's what the president does.
Well, and like Trump, the Trump administration argues for the unitary executive theory.
Yeah.
This idea that all of executive power is vested solely in the person who was elected to be president of the United States. If you don't make that decision under your ideology, you don't make any decisions. Like who's making that choice? If it's not you, if it's not the president,
it's like, and it's just baffling to me that it's like she asked, reporter just asked him the question. He goes, I don't know. Ask my people. They're asking you.
Yeah, I'm starting to think he just doesn't know.
They're asking you for your opinion. And I mean, he doesn't. It goes back to the Bukele meeting, last week or 2 weeks ago, where Stephen Miller answered all the questions about it. And Stephen Miller's the one who told him, no, that's a ruling in our favor. He probably doesn't even know about the ruling. He's golfing every weekend.
Yeah, like we said last week, he gets handed executive orders and he goes, what's this? And then he signs it while somebody else explains it.
Oh, that's a beautiful order right there. Let me.
Of course, we get back to last week's theme where nothing is true under the Trump regime, but it genuinely now seems like for most things, except maybe tariffs, he just doesn't know what's going on. And to me, that is very Joe Biden coded.
Oh, absolutely.
Because towards the end of Joe Biden's administration, that was exactly what we were getting. He just didn't really know what was happening. He was late to the game on every news cycle. And the times when he did get in front of the camera, his arguments could be disassembled so easily with just a little bit of critical thinking, especially when it came to like Israel. He'd never had anything coherent or good to say about Israel and Gaza.
There's a red line in southern Gaza, and Antony Blinken is actively over there not saying that same thing. Yeah.
So, it really does feel very Joe Biden coded for his aides to lie to him and for him to repeat those lies to the camera. Trump was also asked in this interview about sending American citizens to CSOT, of course, that gulag in El Salvador, and he reiterated his support for the idea, saying, quote, I would do that to people who hit old ladies over the head with a baseball bat, people that push people into subway trains just before the train is ready to stop. And, you know,
that's like just like cartoon villains.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, Trump's conception of crime comes entirely from Fox News.
Yeah.
Like, this is what he thinks crime is like.
I'm pretty sure those are, like, exactly Breitbart headlines.
Oh, yeah.
You just go to the crime tab of Breitbart, and it's, coincidentally, a black guy pushes guy into subway, black teens run around and do the punch old woman in the face challenge.
Yep. And all of it's just racially coded nonsense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they act like it's just a widespread phenomenon everywhere.
Yeah. Or they usually use, like, the pushing people onto subway trains thing as a way to, like, deride New York.
Yep.
And somehow, like, in code, talk about how, like, New York is bad because immigrants are there or whatever.
Yeah, it's like poor Democrat-run leadership. Democrats are being tough on crime. It's also like black teens are violent in the scariest demographic in the world, and somehow immigrants are bad too.
Yeah, it's like a few notes. First of all, that should show you how useless police are in New York City. You got police flooding the sewer or the subway, and they're just not stopping any of this. Second of all, in a big city, you're going to have people committing more crimes. It's more people, more crimes are happening. But also, per capita, red states are worse when it comes to crime.
Exactly.
So do what you will with that.
Yeah.
So, but that's like, Trump in that time interview.
He talked about, like, in the meeting with Bukele too, like, oh yeah, you need to build like 4 more CSOTs or something like that. Doesn't he hold like 80,000 people?
I have no idea.
Like 20. It holds tens of thousands of people, some number of thousands. There are not thousands of subway pushers. There's like a couple a year.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, we have already made this argument, but once you're sending some American citizens, it makes it easier to send other American citizens. And we already know Trump's State Department wants to deport people that are threats to foreign policy, quote unquote, based on their criticism of Israel. Yeah. I really wish we lived in a country where a grad student writing an op-ed somehow threatened U.S. foreign policy on Israel.
Oh my God.
That would be so sick.
I wish we lived in the world where people in, like, the real world, not college campuses, actually gave a shit about what students write in the student newspaper.
If a student op-ed could change the world, we'd be living in a communist utopia.
Oh my God, I'm saying, and conservatives write crazy op-eds in college as well, and nobody bats an eye because, like, nobody reads those.
No, yeah, exactly.
Nobody reads those.
Or to the extent that they are read, it doesn't have any material impact on fucking the State Department of the United States.
It does not affect foreign policy.
No, it's ridiculous. But other than that, in that time interview, no other major updates on Kilmar Morego Garcia. Generally, no real updates this week, I don't think. About the Kilmar Morego Garcia story,
which is bad.
Yes,
like they're just dragging their feet on this one.
Yeah, I don't.
The Supreme Court has not, like, come out and issued condemnations.
Right.
Which it's like, if they had the 9-0 ruling telling them to bring it back, you'd think they'd get together and be like, hey, we should probably tell Homeboy to do something.
Yeah, I know. After last episode, they issued. Oh no, we covered a late night.
It was Saturday morning.
Yeah, we covered the Saturday morning ruling. So yeah, I haven't heard anything this week since then.
Not much has come of that. I don't think there've been hearings yet.
Yeah. The real news cycle that fucked us was J.D. Vance killing the Pope.
Oh my God, I know.
That shit, we would have been geeked.
The day after we record, J.D. Vance visits the Pope. The Pope dies.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, the day after Easter.
The day after Easter, and like 2 days after, he skipped the meeting with J.D. Vance to send his aide to yell at him about being a compassionate Christian or compassionate Catholic. And then the KEGseth fucking thing too on Monday. You're kidding.
The KEGseth video was so funny.
Oh my! He's sitting there on Easter, and his kids are looking at him like, "Dog, what have you become?"
He is like soaked in that interview, dog. He is so incredibly drunk, and I get it. Addiction's a disease.
Yes.
But you shouldn't be in denial about it, and you shouldn't be running the Department of Defense.
Sir. Yes, sir.
But that video is so funny. Oh man, that's really good. But yeah, I'm rest in power, King, to the Pope.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna miss the woke Pope very much. And hopefully we get another one.
Hopefully we get another woke pope. I hear there are contenders.
Yeah, the papacy isn't as much of like a political force as it used to be, but it still matters.
Exactly, it still can be cool. It's still nice when we get a woke pope who gets to tell Catholics who are fake Catholics that you have to accept gay people.
Dog, there's so many Catholics that aren't Catholics in the United States.
There's so many Catholics that are American Protestants. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. What do you mean you disagree with the Pope? Is he not the Catholic? Is that not the guy?
He was chosen by God. The Pope was chosen by God to tell you the word of God. And you can't disagree with him. It's what the Pope says.
Is he like the final word on Scripture?
Yeah. According to your beliefs.
Isn't he the descendant of the guy that lets you into heaven?
Yeah. Anyways, on immigration, some other Democrats have started speaking up. Ed Markey, the senator from Massachusetts, independent, I believe, traveled to Louisiana. Oh, wait, no. Is Ed Markey No, he's a Democrat. Never mind.
Yeah.
But he traveled to Louisiana to advocate for one of the people that was scooped up for protesting Israel, a student. I believe that was Ramesa Ozturk in Boston. So he was down in Louisiana advocating for her. Again, they keep moving people from, like, for example, the Northeast to Louisiana so they can get a more harsh judge in the case that they actually get due process.
And I mean, that's just a further testament to the idea that what Chris Van Hollen did just worked.
Matters.
Like, it absolutely worked. Because Ed Markey, correct me if I'm wrong, he's not a progressive guy.
He is. Ed Markey is like a known progressive, but Chris Van Hollen is not.
Van Hollen is not. But either way, it's getting other people in power to like do things. Ed Markey sounds like such a centrist name.
Yeah. No, I think he's like a Green New Deal guy.
I digress. Shit.
He's not like a Bernie. I think he's closer to Warren. I mean, they're from the same state. But
I stand corrected then.
But yeah,
either way,
he
it's
went all the way to
other people
Louisiana,
to do things.
and that does matter. Yeah, that absolutely matters. But in some other news, recently we learned that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of the United States, issued a directive to law enforcement back in March that allows police to enter your home without a warrant if they suspect that there are undocumented immigrants inside of your house under the Alien Enemies Act.
What happened to the Fourth Amendment?
What happened to the entire Bill of Rights that's supposed to protect you from this?
I'm saying.
The memo also reiterates that those being deported under the act, they don't get a hearing or a court date or anything like that.
Okay.
And if you can't see that the administration is using the perception of a quote-unquote invasion at the southern border to trample on your other liberties, I think you're kind of delusional. This is the Attorney General of the United States telling local police, law enforcement, that they can enter your house without a warrant if they just have probable cause to suspect that you have an immigrant inside. And we know for a fact that because there's no due process associated with this, they don't got to prove that they have probable cause.
And it's like, cops are already irresponsible when it comes to getting warrants and executing those warrants.
Absolutely.
Now you're going to tell them they don't even need to do that if they see a brown guy with a soccer tattoo enter your home? What the fuck is going on? Knock, knock, knock. Excuse me. Pretend I'm Colonel Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards. Excuse me. I feel like you're hiding Venezuelans in your home. Let me check it out. Guys.
Like every film we've watched should tell you that this is a bad idea. Like you shouldn't want the government being able to just walk into your house like this. It's absolutely terrible idea.
You get a plainclothes police officer in a Marvel shirt. Pulling up to your fucking house like, I need to check the floorboards for Venezuelans.
Yeah.
Motherfucker, come on. That's not any world that we should live in.
Especially because we already know that they've wrongly sent people to El Salvador.
Yep.
They've snatched people up off of college campuses simply for protesting U.S. foreign policy decisions.
Yeah.
This is a terrible idea.
Oh, my God.
Nobody should be in favor of this. If innocent people can get wrongly grabbed and disappeared, who is law enforcement protecting? Because it's not innocent Americans if you can get grabbed up for no reason.
And even you have to violate innocent Americans' rights in the process of doing this too.
Yeah.
Like it's just a complete suspension of unwarranted search and seizure. It's just warranted if you got a brown guy in your house.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The purpose of the Constitution, for better or for worse, was solely to protect you from arbitrary state coercion.
Yeah.
That is the purpose. We can argue about if positive rights can be interpreted from that framework. But at the very least, the purpose of the Constitution and certainly the Bill of Rights was to prevent the government from doing shit exactly like this. And here we have them doing shit exactly like this.
That's fucking insane. Where are all the like tyrannical government Second Amendment guys? I'm not calling on them to rise up and do anything. Like I say all the time, I condemn political violence.
Of course.
But it's like, even in principle, like, where's that? It's like, it goes back to what we always say. The second is only there to defend the first in the case of saying the N-word, and not in any other case at all.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, all like the stand your ground Second Amendment guys, all of that is just a cloak for being racist.
Exactly.
Like, none of it is genuinely held principles.
Especially like the stand your ground Castle Doctrine guys.
Yes.
They just want to be able to like shoot somebody that tries to rob their house or something. They just want to be able to fucking kill some guy.
Yeah, exactly.
They think about it all the time.
None of it's about actually protecting the rights of them and the people in their community. It is all about them fantasizing about enacting violence onto probably a person of color. That's all that shit is about. And like, people like J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller continue to argue that if we give due process to the quote unquote 20 million illegal immigrants in the country, then we'll never, stop the invasion or whatever, because that's so many people that we have to give due process to. It would simply take too long. And everyone responding to this argument is pointing out that if we don't give them due process, then we don't know that they're undocumented immigrants, because due process is how you find out if they've committed a crime, if they're here undocumented, and so on. But I think everyone's ignoring the fact, first of all, that they already heavily inflate the number of undocumented immigrants in the country. The number is far closer to, I think, best estimates of the number of undocumented immigrants in the country is like 11 million.
And that's total.
That's not under Joe Biden, right?
Yeah, because the way that they frame it is that Joe Biden let in 20. In some cases, I've seen Joe Biden let in 30 million immigrants. You're trying to argue that 10% of the American population are illegal, undocumented immigrants? What? We don't live in the same world, man. And that's like the number one issue in the Republican primary for voters in Idaho? We don't live in the same world. That's crazy.
And, on top of that, nobody is actively challenging this assumption that mass deportation is even a thing that we should be doing.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a hot take, but like, straight up, I don't care if somebody comes here illegally.
Reagan did amnesty.
But like, straight up, I don't care if somebody came here illegally. And by the way, the most common form of illegal immigration is overstaying a visa anyways. But like, if someone's here undocumented for whatever reason, I really don't care, because undocumented people, they have jobs here, they raise families here, they contribute to their communities, both via labor and via taxes, which go into programs that they can't access because they're undocumented. I don't think that people being undocumented is that big of an issue. It just doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, I'm a huge pathway to citizenship guy, and I think the pathway to citizenship should be coming here, and then working here, and then you get citizenship.
And like I said, things haven't always been this way. Our immigration system has not always been this harsh. It's never been perfect, certainly. It's always sort of abused people and a lot of the times used them as a sort of easily exploitable pool of labor. But to the extent that illegal immigration is an issue today, it's one because, like I said, our immigration system is broken and we don't have enough immigration judges, for example. The NGOs at the southern border don't get enough funding. But also, we've ravaged countries in Latin America for decades, which pushes people to move north towards the wealth. And then we punish them by labeling them as like some nefarious force invading us.
Yeah, and it's like, even just going back on that NGO bullshit, we talked about, I think last year or like a year and a half ago, how the biggest problem with processing immigrants at the border comes in the form of these NGOs being underfunded and there not being enough immigration judges to handle the caseload.
Yeah.
That's why you have these backlogs of people being caught and then released in the country for like 10 years at a time before they get a proper asylum hearing. You fix that by paying more judges, hiring more judges, and paying more NGOs to house these people.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
it. But it seems like nobody wants to contend with that.
Yeah.
People only want to give $5 trillion to Border Patrol so that they can still miss people and then, like, not actually do anything to solve the issue. They only want to appease people's fears that immigrants are going to come over and murder your daughters.
Yeah, and that's what frustrates me is, like, we had that border bill under Joe Biden, like, last February or something like that. So we get this border bill, and there are some good parts of it that, you know, do things like hire more immigration judges, which is absolutely necessary. But then they needlessly concede on this idea that we need to be able to shut down the border and we need like millions more Border Patrol officers. It's just not true. Illegal immigration is not a problem.
You could have a Border Patrol officer stationed 6 feet apart, like it's fucking COVID again, throughout the entire length of the border, and it still would not be enough for some of these people. Like, it's fundamentally irrational how they want to solve this problem. We know that the problem is immigration judges, and it goes back to that and J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller saying, oh, they let 20 million into this country in a 4-year period, so we have to get rid of them really quickly because we don't have the means to process them all. You could fund the means to process them all.
You really could.
You could fund the means to give due process to everybody.
Yeah.
That's it.
And it's like, of course, fundamentally, and the due process component is essential here, because if they can just accuse someone of being here illegally and whisk them off without any due process, then they can do it to anybody, right? If they accuse me of being here illegally and there's no due process to prove that I'm a citizen, I show my birth certificate or whatever, and they just get rid of me, then I'm fucked.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so the due process component is essential here. But I don't know why there really aren't any people on the left, like at all, that are making the argument that we don't need mass deportations anyway.
Yeah.
That even if there were 20 million quote unquote illegal immigrants in the country, we don't need mass deportations because immigrants are human beings that are here contributing to society.
Yes.
And are here participating in the economy in such a way that is beneficial to the country as a whole.
You're being exploited for their labor so that some goods can be cheaper or some corporation can just extract more profits that they want. And I can't fucking stand when conservatives hear that argument and say, oh, the left just wants slave labor in this country. No, motherfucker. I just recognize that the mass deportations aren't going to solve that problem. It just kind of makes it worse for everybody because you further push these people into the darkness. A big move that the Trump administration made a couple of weeks ago that we didn't make it to covering because too much has been going on was the Trump administration got access to the to the IRS's documents on fucking illegal aliens who had an ITIN, or an individual tax identification number, who were paying taxes, but then could not benefit on those because the IRS tells illegal immigrants, to pay taxes so that they can build a case for citizenship when the time comes for them to get their hearings. Establishing a tax basis in this country is essential to actually becoming a citizen of this country if you immigrate here illegally or undocumented or in asylum. Like that. And the Trump administration completely took advantage of that situation to look for people.
Yeah, bastardized.
That was a blatant breach of trust. You can't fucking do that.
Also upends their argument that immigrants don't pay taxes when they come here.
100%.
And they just
I feel
mooch
like
off government
more
services.
people should have been talking about that one.
Oh, absolutely. There is no affirmative case for immigrants coming from any side of the political spectrum right now.
Yeah.
I don't even see, I'm not, we're going to talk about Democrats a little bit later on in the episode. Even, you listen to liberals on Pod Save America, for example. I love keeping my hand on the pulse.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? I love to know what the libs are saying. Even they don't make the argument.
What do they say?
They very clearly point out the due process issues, how it's depraved that we're just scooping up students and people that are here living lives and sending them away, especially when we're sending them to a gulag. They have real criticisms of that. But there's no liberal out here making the argument that actually immigration is good for the country, even aside from the melting pot, human rights arguments, freedom of movement stuff. Just argue economically it's good for the country.
And it is.
And it is, provably it is.
There was a panel of 1,400 economists that sided the fucking thing to Trump in his first term that was hey, actually, this is good. Please don't build the wall. The wall is going to cost way too much money.
I don't know why it's just absent. It's completely absent. There's no space for it right now whatsoever. It's very frustrating. But in another wild development,
incredibly wild
development, the Trump administration has arrested 2 judges. One is a former judge this past week. These stories very much still in development.
Yeah.
I would imagine a lot more news will be out by the time this episode releases. But I figured we would cover it because this does feel like an escalation.
Absolutely
an escalation. We need to talk
especially about. Arresting a sitting judge.
Yeah. So the first one, the sitting judge, is a Wisconsin judge. Her name is Hannah Dugan, I believe. She's been accused of trying to help an immigrant escape FBI custody. Apparently, ICE showed up to her courthouse before she had a hearing for a guy that's been accused of domestic violence. So he was there at this hearing for a case unrelated to his immigration status.
Yep.
The allegation from the Trump administration is that he's here illegally, and the case that was sort of pending before Judge Dugan is a domestic violence case, so it has nothing to do with immigration, right? This angered Judge Dugan that there were just ICE agents in the courthouse, and then she allegedly, this is what the FBI is alleging, she allegedly led the man outside through the jury door. Now, details are still developing. But what the administration is alleging is basically that she tried to help him escape as immigration officials were coming to scoop him up, take him away, and probably not give him any due process. But the critical thing here, and again, we're operating on very sparse details. Most of the details are from Kash Patel, and I don't trust anything that comes out of the Trump administration.
Absolutely not, yeah.
But based on what we know, it seems like ICE showed up to try to just take this guy before they could have the hearing on this separate case that they were trying to deal with. And the reason this is so problematic is that if ICE can show up to courthouses and deport people that are accused of being illegal immigrants, then people, regardless of immigration status, if they came here legally or if they're here illegally, will not show up for court cases.
Yeah.
This is also why sanctuary cities are so important for law enforcement and police officers, right? If a police officer goes into a community where there's a crime that's been committed and there's a lot of immigrants that live there, immigrants will not talk to them, again, regardless of immigration status, if they think that cop is going to report them to ICE.
Yeah.
If immigrants that do live here do not feel comfortable interfacing with law enforcement and the judicial system because they think they could be scooped up for no reason, then they just won't show up. Yeah. And this is bad, of course, for sending people to jail that have committed crimes. Like if this guy committed domestic violence, he should face the consequences for it. It's bad because we can't get him on those consequences, but it's also bad because the victims of these crimes will have no real relief because the judicial system can't play out because the person's been deported or they're not showing up because they're afraid of being deported.
It's saying these sanctuary policies are pro law and order.
Yes.
They're pro cop. They make cops' jobs easier and safer.
Yeah.
Look at me making the Blue Lives Matter argument here. It's fucked up. Their own policy. It's like a fucking self-eating snake. You know what I mean? Their own policies are destructive to what they want to accomplish or what they at least espouse to want to accomplish. It's sickening.
Yeah, like we already have a chilling effect, right? Like we already know, we talked last week about the guy, the pro-Palestinian activist who was going to his citizenship hearing and then was scooped up by ICE, like in the government building.
There was an ICE raid on, I think at U of M or in Ann Arbor of students who protested, who were like part of protest movements. Not an ICE raid, but like there was a raid at like their home.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Like we already have this chilling effect that's happening. Immigrants are worried to like go out to these like public sort of events and even like interface with government officials. But if we create an environment where talking to a police officer, going to a court hearing or anything like that could get you deported, people just won't go.
And it's like I keep seeing stories every week of X person showed up to their yearly immigration check with ICE because they had been here, blah, blah, blah. They'd established yearly checks. It's been okay. And then they've been detained at those checks.
Yeah.
People are going to stop showing up to them.
People will just stop.
And then they'll be labeled as criminals when they're just doing it because they're scared they're going to get deported because likely they will get deported.
Right.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Or again, even if they are here legally and even if they didn't commit the crime that they're being accused of, because ICE has just been scooping people up, even people, again, they're here legally, like Kilmar Borrego Garcia, they just won't show up because they don't know what's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
And I'm in favor of these sanctuary policies because I think deportation is bad.
Real.
You know what I mean? Like I'm the human rights activist over here.
Yeah.
But you should also be in favor of these if you just want like the process of law to play out.
I also have to wonder, is this not a consequence of the Laken Riley Act? Not me pretending like ICE is bound by laws and procedure, but in a perfect world where they are, and they are following the law, did the Laken Riley Act not make it mandatory to detain any immigrant even if they're accused of a crime?
I guess I don't know.
Wasn't that part of it?
I think it was. Like if I think deportation is mandatory if you're accused of like a heinous crime.
ICE detention is mandatory if you're like accused of like shit like shoplifting.
And this was like a domestic violence allegation. I'm not sure then.
I mean, they would have nabbed him without the Laken Riley Act.
They were going to get him no matter what.
On my very mad at Democrats arc right now, which has really been this whole show, they're kind of complicit in this. Because, I mean, should this be challenged, they do get to argue we had our legal right thanks to the Laken Riley Act that 10 Democratic senators passed. Or no, more than 10, right?
Yeah. Well, because they got the filibuster-proof majority. It might have been like 9 or something like that. But the point is, like, even so, they would have just said, and I think they did say that he's a member of TDA because like everybody is, if they look slightly Hispanic or something like that, right? And that's also the case with this other thing that happened. A former New Mexico judge, Joel Cano, and his wife were arrested for allegedly harboring members of TDA. Of course, no court has proven that the people that were in their house are members of TDA. That's just the allegation from the government. And I believe, I think it was 3 people that they were alleged to have been harboring, and there's like photos of them with guns that the family owned or something like that. Like, again, details are sort of all over the place right now. I don't know the extent to which either judge committed like actual crimes, and if they did, I'm sure they'll be tried. But the funny part about all of this is that Pam Bondi was on, I believe, Fox News, and was saying the line, "Oh, nobody's above the law," while her administration actively works to be above the law.
Actively is an active defiance of a Supreme Court order right now.
Yes.
Is in active defiance of lower courts orders right now. I don't know. That's pretty interesting.
You're talking like one state judge isn't above the law while the president of the United States is actively ignoring the Supreme Court. All right, yeah.
That's crazy. You're telling me one judge in Wisconsin isn't above the law for letting somebody out a side door while Trump does this?
Yeah, and I don't know if either of these, the judge or the former judge, like committed real crimes. We'll have to find out if, they get due process or whatever. But again, like if immigrants can just be scooped up in the process of doing their hearings, of interfacing with the law, then they're just not going to do it.
It was interesting reading that Kash Patel tweet where he was talking about Hannah Duggan and what she did and how her letting the guy go out the jury door and then allowed him to like get to like the lobby of the building or like outside the building. And then when ICE officers first heard that, they had to engage in a foot race, and that put the public further at danger. It was very nice. It's like the fascist is also the strongest person and the weakest person in the world at the same time.
Yeah, we're getting bitched on, but we're also the superior race.
Yeah, we're the superior race, but we're getting bitched on by this guy who ran away from us. We had to run up and catch him. Yeah, come on, buddy.
Yeah. Also, last piece of deportation news. This came out like yesterday or 2 days ago. There's a story. There's a story all over the place.
There's like 2 stories, I think.
Yeah, about Trump deporting like 2-year-old U.S. citizens.
Yeah. Fucking nuts.
And I will say, I believe the deportation process allows for sending U.S. citizens with their parents if their parents are being deported, like if they're dependent kids, right? But the issue in this case was that the Trump administration did not prove in a court that the mother said, I will take the kid back with me. And the father is actively protesting it. The U.S. citizen father is actively protesting his U.S. citizen daughter, 2-year-old, being deported to Honduras, I
don't know if the father is a U.S. citizen. I think in the AP article I read, it's like undetermined. Like he wouldn't disclose his immigration status. Doesn't matter. She was born here. She's a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
She can stay with like a legal guardian. And I think he had designated his sister-in-law, who is a U.S. citizen, as like the legal guardian. But what's really interesting about that case is it's a Trump judge who went out of his way to, one, call the Gulf of America in rulings. So it's like you get a little bit of his ideological bent there. But that guy went out of his way to go and tell the Trump administration that they need to prove in court, I think on May 16th, that the mother did indeed want the daughter to come with her to Honduras for the deportation.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the case against him seems pretty good. Seems pretty solid.
It's like they could have, the thing that sort of has been perplexing me over the past few weeks is like, they could just go the legal route and get most of the shit done still.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they could not do this so recklessly and still get mostly maybe like 80% of the same outcome.
It seems like they're just trying to hit quotas. And they don't care how they hit quotas. Like that guy we talked about last week who was just grabbed. I said this is the wrong guy, and then they grabbed him anyway. And now they're like, what's this 2-year-old going to do? Like,
yeah, I guess they're just going as quick as possible for the love of the game.
Yeah, and that case is also fucked up, too, because it's like the husband is alleging that he was only given 1 minute to talk on the phone with the mother before she was just taken away. That's not a substantive amount of time to be able to determine the child's future plans.
Yeah.
Whether or not that child needs to go to Honduras with the deported mother or stay in the United States, that's kind of fucked up.
It does seem like we are getting rapidly approaching a collision, like a major collision between the judiciary and the presidency. Yeah. And I don't know what's going to happen.
And it's like every week there is a genuine escalation in what's happening with immigration. There was just the invocation of the Alien Enemies Act. There's sending a guy who literally was not supposed to be sent to El Salvador, which already just illegal. Then after that, there comes defying the Supreme Court. There came some other issues. And now this week, it's U.S. citizens are being sent.
Yeah.
U.S. citizens are being deported, possibly unlawfully.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we're scooping up grad students and sending them to Louisiana to be deported. Like, that's crazy.
We're revoking student visas because of pro-Palestinian activity. Like, it's a genuine escalation. I feel like I'm watching the poem happen in real life.
No, it's the poem. It is quite literally that poem. Maybe the most prescient thing ever created. Oh man,
you remember when Gina Carano posted that on her Instagram story because she thought conservatives in Hollywood were being attacked?
First, they came for the conservatives because I don't get to be in the cast of The Mandalorian anymore.
Because I wouldn't stop being transphobic.
Wokeness has gone too far, folks.
It has, guys. I can't stand it, truly.
That's enough on immigration this week, though.
Not enough on kids.
Not enough on kids. We got to talk about kids more. Because Trump wants you to have kids.
Trump wants a fertile America.
And, you know, I was writing and researching for this story, and I can't get over how creepy the natalism stuff is.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to say, I want people to be able to choose when they have their family, right? That's a position I have. But to actively say, I want you to have kids feels weird.
Yeah, it does.
Right?
Absolutely. It absolutely
something about
does.
that feels real weird.
Because it's like, it's not, is it like a real problem? The
Well,
only people I talk about that I hear talking about the natalism thing is like a real problem is like Elon Musk. And that guy's a freak.
Yeah.
Clearly, that guy's just got a kink for it.
I
you
think
can tell.
It's big among like the tech billionaires. The birth issue.
The creepiest guys in society.
Yeah, weirdest guys in society. Absolutely. But this story actually comes directly from the Trump administration because the Trump admin has a goal.
Okay.
And that goal is raising birth rates. And, you know, Trump and the Republican Party have been cosplaying as like the pro-family party for quite a long time. And most recently, Trump said he supports this idea of a quote-unquote baby bonus for new mothers it would basically be a $5,000 payment to new mothers.
That shit pisses me off to no end. Because it is it's the child tax credit, but worse.
Yes. Like child tax credit, but significantly worse.
Yes. Significant. Child tax credit goes for years. And it ends up being like $3,600 a year per child. Which is
and it's
less,
based on the kid. Yeah.
Less in the initial year, but it continues. It is a consistent payment, a consistent tax credit. This is a $5,000 one-time payment. The Republicans killed the child tax credit in 2022 to give you maybe this half-baked measure.
Yeah. Half-baked measure that, first of all, won't pass, of course. It's not going to be a thing that actually happens. And also, $5,000 does not cover even a year of costs associated with having a kid.
I don't even think it covers the cost of having a kid like at the hospital.
No, it doesn't. I think in-hospital births average like what, 10,000?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's something crazy like that. Like $5,000 is absolutely nothing. And I think there's all kinds of strings that they said would be attached, like, you know, you have to be married and shit like that.
You have to, okay,
because
nice.
we see
wonder
what's
who
happening.
that's about. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, if the Trump administration actually wanted to make it easier for people to have kids, they'd push for the structural changes like the child tax credit or mandating, you know, universal paid paternity leave, higher minimum wages, free daycare, like any policy that makes it cheaper for young people to have kids.
Yeah.
They would try to do that, but
Child
of course
tax credit.
they're not going to.
And it's like JD Vance got on and said, I think before they won the election, he was at that one interview where he said, he was asked explicitly about what are your plans for like daycare? Daycare absolutely strangles families right now,
It's
right?
expensive.
Some people get a second job just to like pay for daycare or like have to work just to pay for daycare. It's a bunch of bullshit. You know what I mean? To have that little extra money to make ends meet. JD Vance said, maybe we should get grandma and grandpa involved.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the
solution. Church. We should give taxpayer money to the church.
Oh, that could work.
Yeah,
That could work.
I know JD Vance said on the campaign trail that he's in favor of the child tax credit, but then a vote was held in the Senate, and he didn't show up.
Interesting.
So,
He also could have reintroduced the bill.
oh yeah, he could have.
Very interesting.
He had the power to do
people
that
do.
as a senator, absolutely. But the story gets like infinitely weirder from here.
I don't think you can talk about the natalist argument and not get infinitely weirder.
Yeah, we're getting weirder from here, folks, right? Because like we have the sort of material policy prescriptions you would have if you wanted people to have more kids. I still think it's weird for you to just say like, I want you to have kids.
Yeah.
Unless you're like, you know, talking to your child about giving you a grandchild.
It's already weird to describe yourself as a natalist, right?
Yes. For that to be like a front running political belief.
Exactly. Because like there are like anti-natalists annoying.
Yeah. I think that's weird too.
There's everybody else who doesn't identify themselves but end up being, I guess, pro-natalists. And then there's the people who call themselves pronatalists.
Yes.
And they're freaks.
And that's who I want to talk about next. I want to read a quote from the ABC story I found. And I'll just, doesn't need any more introduction. I'll just read it. Quote, Simone Collins and her husband, Malcolm Collins, are pro-natalists who have advocated for actions to make it less difficult for families to have children and ultimately reverse declining birth and marriage rates. Simone Collins told ABC News that she and her husband have submitted several draft executive orders to the White House Domestic Policy Council, including bestowing a, quote, National Medal of Motherhood to mothers with 6 or more children.
That sounds bad. That sounds fash.
I want you to guess, dear viewer, which historical political faction had something similar to this.
I can see the spoilers.
I'll just read the quote. The Honor Cross of the German Mother was an award first introduced by the Nazi regime in 1938 to encourage married German women to give birth to many children. Women were awarded bronze for 4 children, silver for 6 children, and gold for 8 children. That's from the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum.
Buddy.
This is why I say the natalism shit just inevitably leads to weird political beliefs.
It's always white supremacists. It's always white supremacists who want, if they could say it cannot be a mixed race couple to get this $5,000 bonus, they would.
Well, and that's what the Nazis did. It was only Aryan women, right?
100%. Yeah. My goodness, man.
It always leads to weird, freaky eugenicist shit, which is fundamentally what it is.
Yeah.
But also at base, this narrative that we need to implement policies that push people towards having more kids and raising the birth rates fundamentally ignores the people who would actually be carrying the pregnancy to term.
Yeah.
Right? We are completely ignoring the women in this equation and treating them as mere vessels that would be pushed into motherhood by these government policies, rather than treating them as autonomous individuals that can make the choice themselves if we give them the resources to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this shit is really weird.
6 or more children? Wild number.
Yeah.
By the way, wild number. Absolutely. You're just, you are a housewife at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And my position is that on birth rates and child rearing generally and stuff like that is that I support policies paid leave for new parents, free access to contraception, free in-hospital births, universal health care, that sort of stuff. But not to push people towards making a certain choice, but just to give them the resources to make whatever choice they want to make.
Exactly.
Because it's not my fucking business if you do or don't have a kid.
I'm saying.
And I think it's really alarming when politicians are like, yeah, I want you to have children.
And it's just
why let people live how they want to live.
It's always Nazis. It's always literally just Nazis too, because it's there's an undertone of this, right? It's always the white trad cat people, you know
always.
What I mean? There's an undertone of JD Vance. You need to have 1 billion kids so you can propagate the white race.
Yes.
That's a little weird.
We basically get to the 14 words at that point.
And they always talk about how the left is so obsessed with sex and sexual degeneracy, and here they are.
Mm-hmm. And you could call us out and say, well, that's not a full argument that this stuff's white supremacy. And fine.
It's not.
It's kind of just a vibe.
It's a vibe, and it's an observation that the only people that are getting out and doing this are white supremacists.
It is. Yeah, that is always who's doing it. And also, one of the best ways, surefire ways, statistically, to improve declining birth rates in a country is to allow immigration. That is single-handedly the best way to improve birth rates, because there are countries that have 1 year paid paternity leave that apply to all citizens. They have universal health care. They have all these subsidies for child rearing and stuff like that, free daycare, whatever. And people will sometimes still choose to not have kids, right? Because they have the resources available to them, but maybe they don't want to have kids, and that should be a free choice that people are allowed to make. But the best way to improve birth rates in any country at any time is to allow for immigration, because new people coming in means more people are going to be having kids.
Increase the tax base, if you will.
And it increases the tax base, too.
Increase the tax base, man. That's crazy.
But of course, they don't want to do that because their goal is not to increase birth rates broadly. It's to increase white birth rates.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, that's all it is.
It's just, it is always traditionalist people arguing for this too. It's always the anti-feminists. Yep. It's always the people who are the women's role is in the home, gender roles, blah, 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 all that shit. But it's also just they're just living in a fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
They're just living in they're very horny. They have a breeding kink. They're also white supremacists, and they're living in this fantasy. Most people could not support 6 kids on dual incomes.
Mm-hmm.
How the fuck is one guy supposed to support 6 kids in this economy?
And people don't be having 6 kids anymore. One, because people used to have a ton of kids because they would work in the fields.
Yeah.
You'd put the kids to work in the fields, or put them inside the steel loom. You know what I mean? But also kids don't die as quick as they used to. Yeah. Life expectancy used to be so low, not because you couldn't live long, but because so many kids would die.
You die it was super common to die before 7 or some shit like that.
So you don't need to have a huge batch of kids, half a dozen kids, just to have a few of them survive. Mm-hmm. So times have changed exponentially. Ultimately, I don't think the declining birth rates thing is that big of a deal.
I don't either.
I think economies can scale and we'll be fine. Social Security might be in trouble, but we could just raise the cap.
I think we should raise the cap regardless, or we could make it progressive.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. So that's natalism. Also, I don't think Trump is principally a natalist.
I think this is the influence. Stephen Miller is principally a natalist.
This is the influence of people like Stephen Miller and JD Vance.
Oh man, a natalist, a nationalist, these things, they go hand in hand.
I believe in religious freedom.
Yeah.
But I don't think that if you converted to Catholicism later in life, you should be allowed in government.
No.
Because the adult Catholic converts, I feel are across the board just wicked people.
Yeah, you know what? I believe in religious freedom. However, if you say you're a Catholic and you say the Pope, he got it wrong.
Yeah.
You're done. You're done, buddy.
If you're a late Catholic convert and you don't support the Pope, then I think you're.
What did you convert to?
You're just a Protestant.
What did you convert to? You could have become like Greek or Russian Orthodox.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
something cool.
They still like follow the Pope. They just don't think his word is bond. Like, you didn't have to be a Catholic. You picked Catholic because you fuck with the aesthetics.
And the aesthetics are cool sometimes.
They are. They got cool buildings and shit.
The Vatican looks cool.
It is.
It looks very cool.
And those little robes they put on?
Yeah.
That shit is sick as hell.
They are. The Catholic vibe is unfortunately very cool. The stained glass and whatnot. But anyways, that's natalism.
That's natalism.
That's birth.
Birth, natalism, nationalism. What about geo-nationalism?
Absolutely. We're moving to geopolitics, focusing specifically here on Gaza, because for a while, we've been talking about domestic news.
It's been popping off.
And yeah, I think it's been fair to focus on domestic news because it has just been a firestorm. Steve Bannon's strategy of flood the zone is just fully in effect here in the United States. But there are some important things happening on foreign policy, specifically on Gaza, I wanted to talk about today. So we all recall that on the way out, Joe Biden's way out, there's a purported deal struck between Israel and Hamas that would have locked in a ceasefire and eventually an end to the conflict entirely. And we, of course, remember this happened on like January 18th.
Yep.
And there's this big debate, like, is Trump coming into office what caused this, or did Joe Biden finally land a deal? We remember this debate, of course.
Yes, of course.
And now we've learned, maybe to no one's surprise, that the deal did not stick. So that entire debate was a waste of time.
Yeah, the deal just kind of went out the wayside like a couple weeks ago, too.
Yeah. It was a multi-stage plan where the first stage, lasting 42 days, consisted of hostage releases on both sides, the entry of aid trucks, and negotiations for a permanent ceasefire. This period of time is now past. It has been over for a few weeks. And the first phase did not result in negotiations of a permanent ceasefire. And so in mid-March, Israel started bombing Gaza again. And since March 2nd, and they were bombing Gaza during, of course, because it wasn't a true ceasefire. But the bombings have ramped up since then. And since March 2nd, the Israeli government has not allowed in a single aid truck. Not one. For the last 7 weeks.
That's like a starvation campaign.
It is.
Yeah.
And for a while, aid agencies had stocked food, so they were good for a little bit. But last Friday, the UN World Food Program announced that Gaza has officially run out of food supplies. And this is an intentional thing. On behalf of that,
obviously, they're explicitly not letting aid trucks in. It's not like they're pretending to let the food ones in. They said no food.
Yeah, they said no food. And Trump said he spoke with Netanyahu. He spoke with Netanyahu about letting in aid trucks, but I seriously doubt anything.
No, you see, it's a red line
to
not let in aid trucks.
Again, very Joe Biden coded in the way that this was reported. And even so, like, Trump's the one that allowed Netanyahu to do this to begin with, as we have been saying for more than a year now. I guess like a year and a half. The United States is responsible for everything Israel does because Israel wouldn't do it unless we allowed them to.
Absolutely.
So Trump could have said on March 3rd, no, you have to let in aid trucks or more people are going to die. He didn't do it, though.
No.
He was posting AI videos about turning Gaza into a resort.
And he keeps talking about turning Gaza into a resort. He keeps talking about how beautiful the beachfront property is.
Yeah.
While they're actively like demolishing Rafah. Or like they're actively demolishing.
Rafah is
like
fully rubble, yeah.
Rafah's fully rubble, but I see them actively like ripping down like the remainders of buildings with excavators and shit.
Yeah, I saw something like 70% of buildings have been 60 to 70 have been destroyed. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And since mid-March, also Israeli airstrikes have been just killing people by the dozens. The latest airstrike, I think, killed 44
just
people.
One airstrike.
One airstrike killed 44 people and injured a bunch more. I mean, we've been saying, again, for a year and a half, like hospital systems have been intentionally targeted and crippled. It is all-out genocide over there. So bad, ceasefire not happening, Trump doing nothing to effectuate it happening. But we can bring geopolitics home and talk about a recent visit we got from someone within Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet.
Oh, please tell me who it was.
Republican officials last week met with Israeli Minister Ben-Gvir on his trip to the United States. Ben-Gvir stopped, of course, at Mar-a-Lago to talk to these guys, and also gave a speech at Yale.
I saw that.
This prompted a bunch of protests. Good for those students. Why the fuck is Yale having Ben Gvir speak?
That's crazy. That's like, and it's like, I had saw people talk about, because obviously there are protests. It's fucking Ben Gvir. He's like the worst guy over there.
It's their Hitler. Like, straight up,
it's like, it's the worst guy over there. And people are talking about like, oh, what's wrong with the Jewish students going to like see this Jewish leader? Brother, it's like the Hitler Youth going to see Hitler.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with him being Jewish.
It has
He's
nothing.
A genocidal
exactly.
freak.
Like, yeah, sure, the irony of that statement, but like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Ben Gvir is insane.
Like, and that none of that's an exaggeration, because he had this meeting at Mar-a-Lago with some Republicans. I don't think Trump was there, but it was Republican officials. And then he tweeted, quote, "I had the honor and privilege of meeting with senior Republican Party officials at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. They expressed support for my very clear position on how to act in Gaza, and that the food and aid depots should be bombed in order to create military and political pressure to bring our hostages home safely." He said we should destroy their food supply, force starvation in order to get our hostages.
That's a war crime.
That's genocidal.
How is this not also just collective punishment on the entire population?
Yeah.
You cannot allege that literally every single Palestinian is Hamas like they try.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this guy's crazy.
Yeah, he's repeatedly said shit like death to Arabs and stuff like that.
Like, how do you want to go and
and it's
see
like,
that guy speak?
We know that like causing mass starvation is a tried and true IDF strategy, but rarely is it so clearly articulated.
Yeah, it's
like,
just so put out there and blatant. Like, he
posted
said it
on Twitter in Hebrew, of course, which I had to translate. And he said, like Republicans agree with me wanting to destroy food so they can't eat.
Oh my God!
Like, come on! Like, this is so obvious what they're trying to do.
What the fuck, man?
And people,
if we were a real country, we'd arrested that guy as soon as he landed.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah, there are arrest warrants out for Ben Gvir, like Netanyahu, right?
I think
obviously we're not following them. But
I think it's only Gallant and Netanyahu, and you have Gallant's like the defense minister.
It's not Ben Gvir.
Yeah, I think Ben Gvir is like a member of the cabinet, but not the defense guy. Which, like, Ben Gvir should be locked up in The Hague forever.
I'm saying,
you know
that guy
I mean?
should never see daylight again.
And it's like, people on the left will point to statements by people like you have Gallant, like Ben Gvir, like others in the cabinet, and say, this is proof of genocide.
Yeah.
And people will respond, Zionists will respond and say, well, you don't know that what they're trying to do is genocide. But if we can't infer from them saying we should starve out the population, then what other evidence will ever convince people that a genocide is happening?
Yeah.
If we can't use proof of an intentional plan to starve a citizen population, then there's no proof that will ever satisfy these people.
They're telling you.
Yes.
They are literally actively giving the game away. I don't fucking understand. Yeah. I think it was a Richie Torres tweet.
Oh, good.
That was,
fantastic.
Because I was thinking about like who in America, what are the liberals that are like defending this guy?
Israel's strongest warrior.
Israel's strongest. I think it was Richie Torres that was like, blah, blah, blah. Let the students go see fucking Mussolini speak. What did
he said Mussolini?
No. That's
Oh,
figuratively.
Yeah, okay,
that's my summary of his tweet. Because functionally, it's let the Hitler Youth go to the Hitler show.
Like I'm all for free speech, and I get it. Universities are public property, or Yale is a private university, isn't it? But I get the argument. It's a university, a place where ideas are spread. Let people speak freely. But I feel like if we don't have at least some form of like dogma associated with what kind of free speech we allow, then other people will lose free speech, and then it kind of just deteriorates everything.
Yeah, there has to be standards, or else
it's the paradox of tolerance.
Yeah, or else bad actors will take over the system. You cannot be tolerant of intolerance. Like, I feel like we shouldn't let like the war criminal,
especially Ben Gvir.
Like
he's the worst example.
He's awful. He's like top 5 bad guys.
Yeah,
like I can't. He's a super villain.
Top 5 worst in the world today.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is hard to think of somebody worse than Ben Gvir, man. Oh my God.
Yeah. Now, of course, we derided Biden's policy on Gaza for quite a long time. It was obviously egregious, atrocious. It was terrible. Trump's is clearly worse, I think, especially with all the talk, like we said, about turning Gaza into a resort. There were also some various reports this past week that Hamas's recruitment numbers are surging right now.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what we said would happen, exactly what a lot of people said would happen, and very unsurprising.
Very unsurprising, yeah.
Like, if you worsen material conditions for a population who has a group like Hamas in them because of terrible material conditions and oppression from a force that's backed by the U.S., then you're just going to encourage more of them to join Hamas.
Fork found in kitchen.
Yeah, you know exactly. Meanwhile, returning to the sort of global nature of this section of geopolitics, the Trump administration has also ramped up airstrikes on Yemen to quite an insane degree. Since March, there have been around 700 strikes on Yemen, with the most recent strike being on an oil port that killed 74 people and injured like 100 plus.
That was last month.
Yeah.
That's like
700 in the last 2 months.
That's like 10 strikes a day or some shit.
Yeah, it's been absolutely. I mean, we got like the Houthi PC small group.
Yep.
And that's what this was about.
Knew it was happening. Oh
so
my God.
While we were laughing about that, they were bombing Yemen. I mean, we said in the episode that we shouldn't be bombing Yemen.
Of course, yeah. But there are like 700 Houthi PC small groups going on now.
Yeah, and we were critical of Biden when he bombed Yemen because like it wasn't fucking working. There was no point. I'm not pro Houthi, but Jesus Christ, it wasn't working. And now Trump's doing it even harder, and it's still not working. I think we just lost like a $300 million drone because they shot it down.
Man, we love doubling down.
Yeah. We're just burning taxpayer money over there, lighting it on fire.
Yeah, I'm saying, man.
And killing people, innocent people, I will add. So we've got all this bad geopolitical news out of the Trump administration, and I feel like it's worth making the point that during the last election cycle, we heard basically nonstop about how Trump is the pro-peace candidate and Democrats are the ones that want endless war. Yeah. But so far in this administration, Trump has not failed the war. So far in this administration, Trump has not ended the war in Ukraine.
Putin, stop.
Stop. He has not ended the war in Gaza. In fact, he's encouraged both to continue, as we've seen. He ramped up the drone strikes on Yemen compared to Joe Biden. And now, most recently, he has been saying that he would, quote, be leading the pack in a war against Iran if they don't agree to a nuclear deal.
You'd have thought Nikki Haley won the primary.
And I'll remind you that we had a nuclear deal with Iran under Barack Obama that Trump got rid of in his first administration.
Like famously, the Iran nuclear deal.
Yes.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
It was a thing. And then Trump also killed people there.
Yeah. And far from getting us out of endless wars, we've got the same amount of war that we had before and more on the horizon.
Yeah, and more war. And we're actively stoking the flames. Like, why?
Pair that with the fact that we have a drunk Fox News host running the Department of Defense and a fucking bloodthirsty psychopath running the State Department. You can almost guarantee that we're going to get more war.
The Halliburton lobbyists can't go this hard. Like, they can't.
Like Pete KEGseth is nonstop talking about how we need to put war fighters back in control. Like, what do you think that means for U.S. taxpayer money?
They want war. They want people to go fight and die.
Exactly. Like, if you were under this idea that there would be less war under Trump, you're delusional.
Pete KEGseth is running the DOD on the idea that there's literally no guts, no glory if there's no guts.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, Trump administration bad on geopolitics as expected.
Yep.
Really bad.
Like really bad.
Really,
like,
really bad.
Atrociously bad. Like, this is insane levels of bad. I didn't think it could get this bad.
And with the whole like Iran nuclear deal thing, I think so when Barack Obama established the JCPOA, the basic idea was that we don't want Iran making a nuclear weapon, so we're going to get rid of some of our sanctions so we can monitor their uranium enrichment so they can use nuclear power but not make nuclear bombs and this sort of thing. Trump gets rid of it. It was one of the actual good things that Barack Obama accomplished on foreign policy.
One of like the only things he accomplished too.
And now what? That'd be like 8 years later.
Yep.
We're coming back to the table and saying, well, actually, we want to do this again, except I don't even know what the demands are of Iran.
It's also like, wasn't Trump's whole thing is like we're getting fucked on this deal or something like that?
Yeah, but like how though?
No, that's like his whole shtick. Mm-hmm. It's that, we have deals with these other countries, we're getting fucked on and we're going to pull out and it's going to be worse for the world. Mm-hmm. And then we'll turn around a couple years later and try and get it all back.
And it's like the neighborhood that Iran is in, it makes sense for them to want to develop a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of nuclear bombs. I'm anti-nuclear bomb.
I think nobody should have a nuclear bomb.
But if countries more powerful than you have a nuclear bomb and you don't, the rational assessment is to try to make one.
Yeah. Do you not want to level the playing field?
Exactly. And if we don't want a country like Iran to get a nuclear weapon, then we need something like the JCPOA that we already had that Trump got rid of, and that even if we get another deal, it's going to be a far worse version than that.
And also, like, I think it's cool to strengthen economic ties so that we don't want to fight.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like we were close to normalizing shit with Iran.
Yeah.
And then Trump came in and ruined it.
And then everything got worse.
Yeah.
Everything got worse.
So that's where we are in geopolitics.
That is where we are.
That's foreign policy for you all folks, and number one podcast.
Number one
you heard it here first.
Where else would you go to get your geopolitics news?
I don't know. I frankly wouldn't go anywhere else.
I practically have a PhD in Middle Eastern studies.
Yeah. He's not that he doesn't have a PhD. He's just that good.
He's just that good. Exactly, folks. That's the essence of this podcast. Now we spent some time abroad. We spent some time at home. Took a little vacation abroad. And now it's time to come back home.
Exactly.
As a Blue Dog Democrat, I mean come back home to the Democratic Party and talk about what they've been up to this week.
Yeah. Slotkin had just a phenomenal piece in Politico. She was doing this interview where she is sort of, seems like everyone's trying to do a paradigm shift nowadays, and nobody knows what that means.
Nobody, they don't have a goddamn clue what a paradigm shift means. And it's also like, why is Slotkin the only Democrat like I'm hearing from outside of the people who are like doing things like Chris Van Hollen, Ed Markey? Why is Slotkin the one that keeps getting all this like media attention?
Well, because she's a rising star.
Like legitimately, they're astroturfing her.
Yeah,
they're making her like a rising star, and it's not real. Nobody, you can't tell me you fuck with her.
Man, if we get Slotkin as like a presidential candidate, oh man, I'd take Pete Buttigieg before her.
Absolutely, Mayor Pete.
Mayor Pete,
come on.
South Bend, Indiana. Yeah, no, she's really bad. But she had this piece in Politico where she's taking the quote unquote war to Donald Trump, and she's targeting. You know,
she's such a CIA agent.
Oh yes.
She's strictly like a CIA agent. That hasn't left her.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, after 9/11, a lot of people like went to the military or joined the CIA or felt like called to service, quote unquote, right?
Yeah.
And that, in a sense, is still like honorable to a lot of voters, and I can see why. But after everything that happened in Iraq, after the amount of lies that our government told,
after the abject failure,
why do people still look at like people that are proud of their CIA service and think like, oh, that's honorable?
Yeah.
Like, I get why you felt that you were called to serve or why there was like an inclination to do that. But after everything we know, why is that still like a good thing to people?
I don't know.
Like, oh, I served in Iraq. Yeah, but like that was bad though. And like, yeah, you were lied to, but why are you like, you should dedicate your life to fighting against the government's lies.
Like, I guess it's commendable that you were willing to lay down your life for a cause. However, it wasn't like, a great cause.
She's always
we should be fighting against that cause.
She's always like, I worked in the CIA under George Bush and Barack Obama. It's like, well, they should both be in jail for what they did on foreign policy.
Fuck with either of what they did there, especially George Bush.
Anyways, this piece in Politico, Slotkin gave an interview, and she was quoted saying that she will, quote, span everything from strategy to tactics and tone, acknowledging public perception of the party as weak and woke needs to change.
Weak and woke.
Weak and woke.
Weak and woke. That's what we're fucking going with?
Yeah.
That's what we're fucking going with. The Democratic Party is weak and woke. The Democratic Party is weak.
Oh, yeah.
Fact. Just undeniable fact. Weak and woke.
Yeah, weak and woke. First of all,
very interesting.
Conceding rhetorical language.
Yep.
Like, we should not be conceding on. I mean, Democrats have already done this sort of across the board.
Yeah, woke is a slur, and I'm offended.
Right. Yeah, we're conceding on this idea that the party is woke and that woke is like a bad thing. But then also the Democratic Party objectively is not woke, even in the way that Republicans define the term.
Even in 2020 when they were pretending to be woke and won the election because of it.
Exactly.
Like they weren't even woke, for real.
And then about Kilmar Borrego Garcia, she said the following, quote, we need to have this fight as a nation about whether we should still uphold the Constitution and still believe there are three co-equal branches of government and that the president is blatantly ignoring one of those branches right now. But here's my favorite part. Yep. I wouldn't have picked this case myself because it's hard with the El Salvador piece. He's in another country, but the case picked us.
Genuinely, why the fuck would you say that? Why? Just why? Why would you say that? No need. Absolutely no need to get out there and say it. This is like the most high-profile event of the Trump administration right now. It is single-handedly opening people's eyes in Republican districts at these town halls to why what Trump is doing is bad. Mm-hmm. And just that quote right there is the essence of what's wrong with not only just Alyssa Slotkin, but with the whole centrist faction of like the Democratic Party right now, man. We constantly talk about how the Democrats refuse to stand on business when it comes to anything and push a narrative that could sway people to back the Democrats and the policies that they pretend to fuck with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And instead, they think that people's minds are made up on every issue. They think that the median voter holds like genuine convictions about whether or not trans women should compete in sports.
Yep.
And they think that polling and focus groups are God.
Yeah.
They worship at the altar of getting three swing state voters together and seeing what they think.
And like, I think that's like Hakeem Jeffries specifically.
Yeah.
Like Hakeem Jeffries is that to a T. I think with Slotkin, it's a lot of that, but I also think she genuinely doesn't care about immigrants.
Oh, I mean,
she voted for the Laken Riley Act.
Yeah, when she told in the response to the State of the Union, she said, President Trump, I look forward to working with you on immigration. Mm-hmm. Buddy, fuck off.
Yeah.
Fuck right off. That's insane. But in this Politico piece, Alyssa Slotkin said that she focus grouped these talking points. Mm-hmm. I never want to hear the words focus group together from a Democrat again.
Yeah, why can't you just believe in something?
Exactly. Why can't you just have convictions, dog. Like, that's it.
We said last week, Senator Van Hollen did not focus group going to El Salvador. He just did it. Like, why can't you just believe some things are right and then advocate for them? And maybe you can use polling to adjust how you talk about the issue, what's most salient, what doesn't work with voters, like how they're interpreting it. But you don't need to use focus group and polling to determine what you believe and what you will campaign on.
Polling can be like a supplement, not the blueprint.
Yeah.
And that's where the Democratic Party is just kind of like fundamentally flawed right now, right? They never go on the attack, and they just constantly yield to a political environment that changes literally by the minute.
Oh, yeah.
We, in this current state of this podcast, cannot cover everything that happens because everything is changing so fast.
Yeah.
Things are degrading so fast. Public opinion is changing so fast that it is not being accurately captured everywhere. And they always find a way to yield to the worst and just most fringe aspects in what can only be described as this borderline religious, like, pursuit of bipartisanship.
Yeah.
They try, especially Alyssa Slotkin and these people, try so hard to appear as level-headed, grounded, and bipartisan that they will take the most minor critique of any instance and amplify it by themselves. Mm-hmm. To just appear that way.
And these people, like Alyssa Slotkin, do this thing where they, like, exceptionalize Trump in a way to not associate him with the Republican Party broadly. When the Republican Party broadly is unpopular, and by exceptionalizing him, you make Trump look like he's an outsider still, even though he is very much ingrained in the establishment at this point.
The establishment has been built, the Republican Party establishment has been built around him. Mm-hmm. He took over the RNC and instilled his family at the head of it.
Yes.
Donald Trump is the Republican Party, is the establishment. Come on, guys.
Congress has passed, like, nothing this session. And it's because Donald Trump hasn't asked them to.
Like the Lincoln Riley Act, because the Democrats let them.
The Democrats joined them. But, like, basically nothing has been passed other than things Donald Trump has approved of. The entire party, from Congress people to people all the way down in individual states, they all listen to Donald Trump.
And it's just like, you can't tell me that stupid fuck-ass quote, I wouldn't have picked this case, but the case picked us, isn't just everything wrong with the party. Mm-hmm. I cannot be convinced at this point. Mm-hmm. I'm not a principal actor. I believe in something.
Yep.
I have a genuine conviction about this that, I may not be swayed from.
You shouldn't need to, like, read an article or see a news report and think, I need to consult my polling before I can decide how to feel about this.
Let me assemble a group of 15 voters.
You should be able to do the research and, like, based on your principles, have an opinion.
Yes.
That's how I do. That's how we do the pod, at least.
I read an article.
Yeah.
And then I say what I think about it. Mm-hmm. And then I read articles to figure out the facts of the matter. And then I come on here and I disseminate my opinion.
We don't have a polling outfit.
I don't have a polling outfit. There's nobody that I go to. I don't even consult with Jeremy when I'm writing the show notes. I get down there, I write my little notes, and then I come here.
Yeah, we could show up and completely disagree.
We could. we could. 4 years hasn't happened, but we could.
We could get in a fucking fight right now.
We could. Actually, I don't think we should take up this case. I think, there are problems with the whole El Salvador
piece. It's too difficult.
It's too difficult to argue about, man. Oh my goodness. And it's like, the Democrats have been handed momentum and a story that is actively galvanizing people against Trump on a silver platter. Why give credence to the other side in any way? Mm-hmm. You are just doing it for the love of the game, and it's a bad game, folks. Yeah. It's a really bad game. You're stifling your own momentum just to appease a couple people who will never vote for you.
Yeah.
Because you are not, and I'm talking to Alyssa Slotkin, because you are not inspiring. Like, straight up, man. The people that would be swayed by anything are the people that are swayed by Trump because they think that he says it like it is. Uh-huh. That's it. Because they see that Trump speaks with some facsimile of conviction, and that's why they fuck with Guy.
Yeah.
It used to be accepted as like a common thought that the median voter will vote for the president that they think they can have a beer with. Mm-hmm. That's how people used to talk about politics in like 2008 and 2004.
Yeah.
Why are we pretending that that's not still the case anymore? Uh-huh. Why are Democrats pretending that people are genuinely like convicted against letting a trans athlete compete?
Or they're like born with these convictions that can never change because of it. Like, no, we just have to convince them.
Why are they acting like you can never reach a rural voter on social issues when these same rural voters will have a kid, some of them will have a kid that ends up being trans, and then they'll change their opinions?
Uh-huh. And it's like, it's hard on the El Salvador piece, but to win the narrative here, you don't necessarily have to bring him back. That should be the goal.
Yeah.
But as long as you are like repeatedly pointing out, if the party in unison is pointing out that Donald Trump is sending people here legally to concentration camps because he hates immigrants, I think that would go quite a long way.
Yeah.
And even if you didn't end up getting it back, the argument is still there that Trump is working with an authoritarian. He's acting authoritarian to accomplish the ends of an authoritarian. I think that is still effective messaging.
And the polling is bearing out that is effective messaging.
Yeah, and like I think voters will understand that you're the minority party and you can't really do anything. Like the only point of being the opposition party is to make the other guys look bad.
Exactly.
That is how our system is set up. That's how you win in midterm elections in scenarios like this. You just got to make them look bad, and you do that by calling out what they're doing, and this is a very obvious moment that Trump is doing something wrong.
Do you think a Republican would ever look at a list of books being banned and say, oh, well, this one actually depicts a gay romance in a very responsible way? They're going to say, no, this is gay, this is from the devil, and it's going to make my kid want to suck cock. Like, you're never going to get that credence. Why are you giving it to them?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? Like, she is actively telling anyone who made the mistake of listening to her that she would have not fought for this case if it wasn't for the media forcing her.
Yeah.
That's what she means when she says, I wouldn't have picked this case. The case came to us. I don't care about this case. I don't care about this man principally losing due process and being sent to the torture camp in El Salvador. But I guess I was told to. So I'm going to pretend to care about it and not even come on the stage with any sort of positive conviction. This type of semi-neutral framing needs to be purged from the party. We need people with real convictions who are willing to affirmatively call out this blatantly fascist action.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it.
And it's not even that we're arguing to get rid of nuance. Like, you can still have nuance in your political opinions. I think that
we do all the time.
Yeah, we take the time to discuss the nuance, but you need to firmly believe and argue in favor of something. Not just say oh, I'm arguing about this because it just happens to be the thing people are talking about.
Yeah.
You got to be able to catch a vibe, of course, but this is not doing that. This is running from the vibe as fast as possible.
Saying
this is being afraid of the vibe.
I guess I'll pick it up. I guess I'll fucking bump to whatever you got playing on aux. Come on, man.
Yeah. It's just
that quote is damn near everything wrong with the Democratic Party right now.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But we got one more quote in this Politico article. That sort of, I think, summarizes where she's trying to go aside from immigration stuff specifically. This is from the article, quote, her strategy also focuses on language and tone. She said Democrats should stop using the term oligarchy, a phrase she said doesn't resonate beyond coastal institutions, and just say that the party opposes kings. And to beat their weak and woke rap, Democrats should channel the no bullshit energy of Lions coach Campbell. She said, a wonderfully sappy guy with his players, but who is also smart and tough and lovable. Slotkin plans to deliver another speech, which is set to focus on killing sacred cows sometime next month.
Cringe.
Yeah, two quick things. Never invoke Dan Campbell like this.
How dare she invoke my beautiful Honolulu Blue Detroit Lions?
This is a crime in and of itself.
No.
Invoking Dan Campbell to make your point poorly?
Yep.
That is just completely disrespectful. Also, the bit on killing sacred cows? All right.
Come on now. Also,
what could that mean?
Oh, voters are too fucking stupid to fuck with oligarchy.
Yeah.
To understand what oligarchy means, you need to say kings. Voters have actively rejected the idea of calling Trump a king because, frankly, that's not really what's happening yet. We are actively in an oligarchy, and Bernie Sanders has functionally communicated that to red states, red districts across the country.
And I feel like king kind of gives some legitimacy. When you think of a king, you don't necessarily think of somebody doing things evil and authoritarian.
And it's so easy to look at Trump's a king and say, no, the fuck he's not. But you cannot say that Trump is not engaging in pro-oligarchical activity. He put billionaires in his cabinet, much easier to argue for, and has been effectively argued for, unlike the whole Kings thing.
Yeah. Bernie and AOC are bringing out 30,000 people in Idaho.
Exactly.
Slotkin could never.
No.
Ever.
No.
Even if she's going on her Stop the Monarch tour or fucking whatever. It's not to, and also to say oligarchy is only understood by the fucking bicoastal elites. That's nonsense.
That's absolutely
total nonsense.
Oligarchy, it's a little bit of a harder word, but it's a pretty basic word. It's a word you're talking about in your high school political science class that nobody pays attention to, but they walk away with that.
If you're consistent with the messaging, you can normalize the use of the term.
Interesting how you can make people aware of something rather than only engaging with things people are already aware of. Sounds like there's a problem here that has been identified previously on this podcast, but also just I'd like to take a moment to, one, talk about my beautiful Detroit Lions.
Of course.
And two, talk about how this is a purely aesthetic prescription.
Yeah.
That means nothing. Invoking the Lions' Dan Campbell means nothing in the way that she is saying it, right? She is correct in identifying that the Democrats need to be more like the Lions. but entirely incorrect in her assessment of how the Democrats should model themselves after them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Dan Campbell introduced radical change to the Detroit Lions. That is why we went from the laughingstock of the NFL to the successful franchise we are today. Campbell did not just come into the team and say we need grit. He went out and he drafted players with said grit. He actively brought organizational change that would foster and hone said grit. The Detroit Lions also became successful by sticking to their guns and not backing down.
Yeah.
They were one of the most aggressive fucking teams in the NFL when it comes to fourth down. Going for it on fourth. And stick with me, because I promise this means something. When it comes to politics, they were incredibly aggressive in ways that they have not been before. They opened up the trick play bag in ways that no other team had before.
Yeah, people are emulating the Lions now.
They were engaging in incredibly unorthodox tactics to get to it, and they were living by the sword and dying by the sword and sticking to it. They were taking radical risk because they believed in their players, and they believed that everybody could handle it under pressure. This is everything the Democrats don't fucking do. In Campbell's first press conference, he got up there and said we need to be biting kneecaps.
Yeah.
The Democrats would never talk like that. Those are the aspects of Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions that would make you successful.
Chuck Schumer gets up there and he says, I respect my Republican colleagues.
He says, I respect my Republican colleagues. And then Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and party leadership say, you can't protest the State of the Union by getting up in the middle of it or bringing props because those would be too disruptive. Instead, let's color coordinate. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, tell me which fucking Democrat is biting off kneecaps.
Exactly.
It's not Slotkin.
It's absolutely not Slotkin, which he talks about killing sacred cows. And also, Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, goated GM, went out there and drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, running back, 12th overall pick. First round of the draft. Widely criticized by everybody in the NFL, everybody paying attention. Yeah. Jahmyr Gibbs has turned into a superstar.
Oh, yeah.
Superstar.
Deservedly so.
Phenomenally productive player. Absolutely goated, also helping to change the narrative around running backs' value in the league. That move would not have made it out of focus group.
That's true.
That's true. Would not have made it out of focus group.
All the polling would have said, don't do that.
Everything Dan Campbell has done to turn around the Detroit Lions is everything the Democrats should be doing. And how dare you invoke his name in this way?
Yeah.
The patron saint of Detroit, motherfucker, man.
Yeah.
She clearly only brought up the Lions because focus groups told her to.
Yeah.
She clearly only did that because some median voter in Michigan was like, "Oh, I like the Detroit Lions. She's talking about them."
Yeah, it's the same reason she talks about the automobile industry.
Yep.
And introduces that bill to ban Chinese cars or whatever. It's not because she genuinely believes in any of this. It's just because it's politically convenient for her to bring that stuff up and sort of signal to what she believes to be her base that she's, moderate and in touch. But none of it is any real convictions outside of, I guess, being a CIA agent, which she invokes nonstop.
This whole battle plan is framed. I used to be in the CIA.
It's all about national security.
It's a common adage that the fight doesn't stop until you die. What are you fighting? Well, how are you fighting?
Who's the threat? Be honest.
Who's the threat here? You're not really calling anybody out. In none of these quotes was she talking about Trump is a fascist taking over the government right now. Instead, it was, don't use oligarchy. People don't know that term.
She also was doing this thing in this Politico article, or maybe it was in a separate thing. No, she was giving a speech the other day, and she was saying that Democrats need to reclaim patriotism and the American flag from Republicans and Trump, who was stepping all over it. That's exactly what Kamala Harris did.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not. I'm not going to make the argument that wasn't, at least in some ways, aesthetically successful, because it might have been. It might have been a good move to do. But the reason she lost is not because there was no patriotism on the left side of the election this time around. It is very clearly because there was no narrative there, and she was associated with Joe Biden.
And it's Republicans don't do patriotism in any principled way. They do nationalism very principally.
Oh, yeah.
But that's very bad, and everyone recognizes that's bad, but you won't do the word associations that allows them to. When Republicans invoke patriotism, and why Republicans are perceived as the patriotic party is because Ted Cruz gets out there in fucking cowboy boots and a cowboy hat.
Yeah.
Motherfucker never worked on a farm.
Never.
Motherfucker's never done anything with his hands.
He flees. Anytime there's a cold storm in Texas.
It's a cold storm. He flees and then blames his daughters.
Yeah, exactly.
These guys are the patriots. Republicans very cynically invoke patriotism.
Yeah.
That's not
Pete KEGseth will wear an American flag tie and say that he's a real American patriot.
And I've made the argument that Democrats should try and invoke patriotism because you can make you can frame progressive policies in patriotic ways. I think that's fine. But you have to start with like somewhere that people would actually want to fuck with. You can't take patriotism from Republicans without radically changing what that patriotism is, because just like how you can't out-border them, you can't out-patriot them. They will always go to, we're the party of veterans, we're the party of cowboy hats, we're the party of wearing a white boot to an active natural disaster zone like Ron DeSantis.
Yeah.
Come on, motherfucker.
Like, it seems like she just wants to like have an agenda or like a Democratic brand that is just like patriotism and national security.
Yes.
But if I feel like the sort of patriotism that she's envisioning, or that like could be available on the left, is only possible if you couch it in like working class populist rhetoric.
I was going to say, you know what patriotism would fuck, actually? Patriotism that centers on how the working class built this country, on how unions are the only thing that will save you against your boss, how we should be more pro-union, how we should be pro-labor. You can make very patriotic arguments by framing them as pro-labor arguments, because they are.
Yeah.
Like, Hillary Clinton did the whole thing in, like, what, 2016? Like, we don't need to make America great. Like, this America's already great. Like, motherfuckers have tried to do the vain patriotism stuff.
Yeah.
You're never going to beat Republicans on it because they're just going to lie.
Yeah, they're just going to lie. And, like, I don't even think you need to do the patriotism stuff.
You don't.
Because, like, I don't really fuck with it that heavy.
Who's, like, super motivated by the patriotism thing other than people who are only going to fuck with Republicans?
Exactly, because it's just, like, thinly disguised racism and xenophobia. Like, that's the purpose of people like Trump's, patriotism, nationalism. It's just
patriotism, and the way the Republicans do it is just like a gateway drug to being a Nazi, being a pro-natalist, and being weirdly obsessed with white people fucking.
Exactly.
And that's not me, man. That's not me.
So I can't fuck with Slotkin.
I cannot fuck with Slotkin. And after it's like it's getting so much worse. I already didn't like her. You guys already know we didn't like her. But like,
I'm wondering what sacred cows she's gonna kill.
Oh my god, I know.
Because like she.
Well, what's it going to be? Trans people? Like,
yeah, I'm trying to think.
It's got to be wokeness. It's got to be we need to abandon minorities. Oh, yes. Far too long, the left has been unwilling to criticize. The left has been unwilling to invoke 1350. Like, come on, man. Like, I'm scared that's where it's going to go.
I'm trying to think, like, never in her career, or at least when I've been paying attention to her career, has she ever made, like, a strong statement about anything. Like, she's never offering a hot take. You know what I mean? I've never seen that happen. So when she says she's going to kill sacred cows, it's either going to be something like milquetoast
pronouns
that nobody cares about, or it's literally going to be like, maybe we shouldn't have grown men playing with women in high school sports. You know what I mean?
Dude, because like at this moment in time, you can't convince me that it's not something about turning your back on social issues.
Yeah.
Because all of this is centered on what Republicans' perceptions of Democrats are, not anybody else's. That's why she's saying we're weak and woke. Only Republicans describe us like that.
Yep.
Well, them like that. I'm not lumping myself in with Alyssa's Slotkin. I can't do it. I'm reflexively. I just cannot. But like, what is viewed as a sacred cow by the Republican Party, by people who would criticize Democrats? It's the pronoun shit.
Yeah, it's going to be like what? I don't know what else it would be.
She's going to get up there and invoke some niche online thing.
Yeah.
And be like, guys, we can't be doing this. We can't be accepting neo-pronouns.
And
then that's going to be the first time a million people have ever heard the word neo-pronouns.
Like, there's no way she comes out against, like, Social Security and Medicaid.
No.
Like, she's not, there's no fucking way.
What if, though?
Because I'm thinking, like, material sacred cows that, like, genuinely Democrats, they don't do much to bolster it, but they will at least rhetorically defend them.
She's not going to turn her back on the auto industry.
She's not going to turn her back on the auto industry. That's not the sacred cow she's going to kill.
No.
Although maybe that's one that deserves to be killed in some ways that we don't have time to talk about here. She's not going to get out there and talk about Social Security or these things that, like, genuinely people depend on, I don't think. So it's got to be, like, social issues.
Yeah. Like, I'm genuinely scared she might get out there and say, guys, pronouns have gone too far.
Yeah.
Brother, who cares?
Because, like, it's like Democrats aren't that far left. Democrats are right-wing on immigration right now.
Yeah.
There's no sacred cow to kill there. It's been killed a long time ago. It wasn't even ever a sacred cow. It's just a good thing that was happening.
It's being killed actively. You're, like, reluctantly defending it because you were told to.
It's got to be, like, Democratic positions on, like, trans people.
My money's on pronouns. It's got to be pronouns or women. Women in women's sports is the one.
Yeah. I don't know what else. There's no way it's abortion, right?
It can't be.
That would be.
It can't be abortion.
Psychotic.
It can't be like a race thing.
That would be crazy. She just goes full white supremacist.
Do you think it's like a DEI thing?
Maybe it's like DEI and pronouns.
Because like, really, like legitimately, it's like I feel like a lot of how Republicans have built up their thing over the past years is just throwing queer people under the bus. Like that's kind of how like Gamergate happened. It's just like, oh, I don't want women without double D tits and a fucking 6-inch waist in my video games.
I got to be able to beat it while
I got to be able to beat it while I play the game. Hand on the meat, one hand on the meat, one hand on the roller.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
That's how it's got to be.
That's kind of how they've been able to like wedge these things, and Republicans act like trans people are this sacred class of people that you can't criticize. Is that the sacred cow?
Is that what you're saying? Republicans frame it that way?
Republicans frame it that way. Republicans frame it like, you can't talk about... or it's like, is Alyssa Slotkin going to go out there and say we should be able to say slurs? Like,
yeah, what fucking sacred cows are you talking about?
I don't know. I want the speech now, actually. I'm very curious. My bet's on pronouns.
Because it's not going to be anything related to like national security because she's a fiend for that stuff.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
She's very pro-USAID and stuff like that. I don't know what other like Democrats don't really have sacred cows like that.
No,
I mean, if it's got to just be like, don't be transphobic
or
like
be transphobic. Actually, that would be her position. That's the new position is be transphobic. I hope I'm being uncharitable. I hope that's not what happens.
I guess we'll find out. But apparently, she's going to be doing some speeches, and we'll find out what sacred cows she thinks deserve death.
Like the only people that think that pronouns have gone too far are people who have never interacted with somebody who has different pronouns. They've never had to, like, I don't know, change one thing they say about a person.
How have pronouns gone too far? You got to put a name tag on that says she, her.
Exactly. Guys, we need to stop pronouns and email signatures.
Anyways. Moving on to the hog.
Yeah, stay tuned for that one. Yeah. Shifting gears slightly, but still sticking with the Democrats. New DNC infighting just dropped. This one was pretty interesting for a couple of reasons now. So this week, David Hogg, the vice chair of the DNC, announced that he's going to start focusing efforts to raise $20 million through a PAC unaffiliated with the DNC to start primarying like do-nothing Democrats in safe blue congressional districts.
And that's sick.
That is sick. That's
sick.
Actively gas. Democrats should not be able to like sit by and comfortably do nothing with everything that's going on right now. You should not be able to sit in your just strong fucking D plus 40 district in Connecticut and not have to fight, not have to say anything, and dare I say, be able to have bad opinions about the issues we're facing today.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be a thing. You should be able to face a primary challenge. That's the only way to hold these people accountable.
Absolutely.
Is a primaries.
Yeah. You shouldn't be able to just like sit comfortably in your chair while the country falls apart around us, where you're like your party is the only like what do they call it? I don't know, barricade against this shit.
Exactly.
Right,
and it's
the
like
only bastion against
these people in these safe blue districts are the reason why Democrats are perceived as so weak.
Yeah.
Like, because they suck. They suck and they are weak, frankly. Yeah. They're constantly capitulating to the other side. But I digress. Hogg specifically said, voters don't view Democrats as, quote, real alternatives to the Republican Party. That will not change if we keep the status quo. We have no other option but to do the hard work of holding ourselves and our own party accountable.
I didn't know David had game like that.
I didn't know he had game like that either. I thought he was like a shitlib 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I didn't know bro was about it like that.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And it's cool to see somebody, in
locked in.
DNC locked in like this.
The vice chair, yeah.
The vice chair.
I'll give it to him on this one.
However.
Of course.
However, newly elected DC chair Ken Martin took issue with this. He said, David, you're not cooking. What are you doing? Saying in a Time article titled...
David, get out of the kitchen.
He said, David, get out of the kitchen. He might actually kick David out of the kitchen, actually. In a Time article titled, quote, voters should pick their candidates, not party bosses.
Dog.
He said that he would be proposing rules in August that would require all DNC officers to maintain neutrality in all party primaries.
This is strictly not the party choosing party bosses. This is not party bosses choosing the candidates. It is offering voters more options.
And this is David Hogg. Yes, he has a position in the DNC. Yes, he is the vice chair of the DNC. He is an officer within the organization, acting on his own accord, separate from the DNC, with a different PAC raising money to do these things.
Yeah.
This is not a DNC action. These two things are borderline mutually exclusive.
Yeah, because I could get it if he was using DNC funds to fund a primary challenger. I could see why there might be like conflict of interest type stuff there, but that's not what's happening.
And it's like Ken Martin, like in writing this article, in coming against David Hogg and justifying his like new rule change that he wants to propose, he invoked like the correct perception that voters were pissed after the 2016 primaries because they felt like the DNC tipped the scales towards Hillary Clinton rather than Bernie. This is true. That did happen, but that happened with superdelegates. Like that happened with superdelegates. That happened with other like party things, and that happened.
He better get rid of the superdelegate process then.
I think he has done. He talked about in the article how he has done work to like reform superdelegates to make sure that stuff doesn't happen.
Reform or eliminate.
You
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you can reform it and then the same shit still happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
he also invoked his like time working his way through like the ranks of the party, talking about how he is a reformer and wants change too, but still reaffirmed the neutrality from the DNC is the way to go. And it's like, I feel somewhat conflicted about this because, like, yes, the DNC as like an organization should ideally be neutral when it comes to like Democratic primaries. They should run the infrastructure that helps facilitate like general election wins. But like, this isn't a DNC action. David Hogg, like silencing David Hogg is doing nothing to combat concerns that the DNC is corrupt and picking who's going to win in primary candidates.
Yeah.
And also, this is only a pro-status quo move. And right now, the status quo strictly favors the centrists and strictly favors these people who cannot be held accountable in any other way other than a party primary.
Well, and it's like David Hogg is not saying that he's going to only fund progressives. He's saying he will fund people that will challenge people in seats that are doing nothing.
Yes.
Like, this is literally like the taking action versus doing nothing Democrats.
He could be funding more Chris Van Hollen's.
And I am totally in favor of the DNC using its power, its limited power, and weaponizing it against incumbents that are doing absolutely nothing. Because we are at a point where I can understand in like a vacuum why political neutrality from the parties would be important, especially when we're talking about a democracy where voters decide.
Yes.
But we're at a point when Trump has caused the entire Republican Party to fall in line behind him, and he is actively deporting people that are here legally. He is picking up political dissidents, taking away their student visas, and sending them away. This is not the time to remain neutral.
No, and this is not the time
to use every ounce of power you have to ensure that we can stop this guy.
Yes.
As it says, as it is said and written in Dante's Inferno, the hottest place in hell is reserved for those who stay neutral during a time of crisis.
Real as hell.
You cannot remain neutral during a time of crisis.
Like, to enforce rigid neutrality rules at a time like this, when like no median voter in fucking safe blue District 92 in Connecticut is going to get out there and say, oh, David Hogg funded this primary, therefore the DNC as an institution is corrupt.
Yeah.
They have no idea that David Hogg funded the primary challenge.
Because that's just the way it works.
This is not something that regular voters pay attention to. The only reason like the superdelegates get brought up is because that was a general election. And I'm not saying that that's good. I'm not saying
presidential
election. I'm not even saying do like superdelegates for progressive in these districts. Like I do agree with the idea that the DNC shouldn't have anything to do with like funding or picking who should win primaries, because if they did, realistically, we'd only ever have centrist candidates and progressives would never win. But to punish David Hogg for actually getting up and doing something is kind of insane.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like DNC neutrality in primary elections is not the biggest problem with Democrats right now. That's not even the biggest problem with the DNC right now. A way bigger problem is how they fucking just run their campaigns. The DNC's job is to put forth the infrastructure for primaries to be able to happen, and it's to put forth infrastructure for someone to go on and win the general election and help them with their campaign.
Yeah.
That's their entire job. They do a bad job at that. They can't campaign to save their fucking life. Like, I think if we're going to reform this, let's reform that part rather than silencing David Hogg and maybe even kicking him out of his position of power. Kicking someone who is so clearly showing that they have their finger on the pulse with this issue right now, that is in line with where public opinion is going on this issue right now, kicking them out of the party so that they would have no sway in a possible 2028 election and how that campaign gets run, because they funded primary challenges to better represent people who couldn't represent themselves. When we have someone who's in a safe blue district, who is an incumbent advantage, all that fucking DCCC money like going to them to win like their fucking after their uncontested primary to go on and win the general election, that's not voters choosing who gets to represent them. You need funding across the board. You need a robust primary for voters to actually be able to choose who is representing them. Party bosses are not picking people by allowing somebody to go work with a PAC to raise funds for an alternative candidate.
Right, and on the other side of that, the centrists are de facto in charge of the party.
Exactly.
Because there is no resistance to them, because the party apparatus itself has encouraged them to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Like, I understand in a vacuum why party neutrality is important, especially when we look back at American history. Party bosses, party machines have played like a massive role and have been absolutely harmful to the democratic process.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about like David Hogg himself tapping Jerry Connolly on the shoulder and saying like, hey, Doug, you got to stop.
Yeah.
This is just funding primary challengers. And if the incumbents think that they deserve to stay in office, then answer why in a primary.
Yeah, answer why. Do your job.
Yeah.
Do your job. Go out and campaign and raise funds.
Yeah.
It's bullshit.
And also, it's besides the fact that we have a fascist in power.
It's focusing on the completely wrong issue here.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the wrong issue. Nobody is thinking about neutrality in the DNC right now. Also, like, neutrality in DNC primaries is not going to stop Barack Obama from calling up all of the other primary challengers to consolidate behind a geriatric Joe Biden in 2020.
Yeah.
There are issues that go beyond how the DNC runs their primaries and their primary process that are completely unaddressed by this. This isn't even like a meaningful reform. It's just kind of something that's like, I guess, good in a vacuum in a different time.
It's like 50 years from now, if we're all, dead because we were sent to a gulag, no historian's going to look back and give it to Ken Martin for remaining neutral.
Exactly.
Like, no one's going to be like, oh, yeah, that was the right move. No, you need to mobilize every ounce of political force you have against this guy. And if that means kicking people out of the party, or taking a chair away from a 70-year-old who's doing nothing, I think I'm fine with that. The Democrats lost several seats which Republicans picked up because Democrats died in office in the last few months. That is why Republicans in the House have grown their majority by a few seats, because Democrats have died while serving. They're too old.
Part of what David Hogg is doing is trying to get younger people in office.
And he's not even saying, like, I'm trying to fund communists. It's just opposition.
I don't even think he would want to.
Yeah.
Like, we need people who can fucking survive their terms. At the very base level of this, we need people who can live out their 2-year term.
Yes. Yeah, like they just won it again, and you...
like, what do you do? What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are we doing, dude? It's so just like every single Democrat is like focusing on the wrong things, except like AOC and Bernie right now.
And Bernie's not even a Democrat.
I saw New York Times Siena polling that said that AOC has gained with Republicans.
Yeah, AOC's like at a peak for her favorability
in 2019, AOC had like a 6% approval from Republicans, and now she has a 21% approval.
Yeah,
from Republicans in New York. If you're the Alyssa Slotkins of the party and you want to actively appeal to the middle and do bipartisanship and appeal to both sides of people, I think we are actively seeing right now that the people who can be swayed are responsive to the people who go out there with genuine convictions.
Yeah, and like the whole popularist argument, which I think is sort of where Slotkin finds herself.
Like the Matt Iglesias popularism shit.
That you should choose the positions that are currently, contemporarily popular in order to win elections. And if that's the case, you should be doing what AOC is doing.
Exactly.
Because her favorability is going up. The policies she's advocating for are popular with a wide variety of people, ideologically diverse people. You should be adopting that pursuit.
Yes.
But you're not doing it.
And just like speaking to the idea that polling should be like a supplement, not the blueprint, I think what polling is showing right now is that Trump is unfavorable on immigration, but favorable on the border right now. Those should not be two things that are separate from each other.
Yeah.
The Democratic Party needs to engage in the rhetorical work to marry the issues so that they can actually take things in a different direction. And I don't understand why they don't see that. Like, why are we the smartest people in the room?
Even so, that's unacceptable. I should be talking about silly stuff, not any
exactly.
of this. But no, I think in terms of polling, Trump is like I think he just had his first poll where his favorability is under 40%.
His first 100 days poll came out and shows that he has the worst favorability rating after the first 100 days than the previous worst president, which was him.
That's excellent, dude. That's awesome.
I think in like 2016 he had or 2017, I guess he had a 45% approval rating, and now it's a 44 or something like that.
Hey, man, he beat himself. Sometimes you're your own worst enemy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Man, it's bad out here.
Yeah, so that's the Democrats.
That's the Democrats.
That's
this
the Democrats, and Republicans are out here leaking group chats not only to the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, but just to their sister.
That's the KEGseth leak, which I feel like is just old news at this point. But he had his wife and his lawyer on a group chat where he's just sharing like Houthi PC small group
That's
talk.
like is that not just like worse?
Oh, certainly.
Like that's got to be worse than leaking it to The Atlantic, right? Because at least there's like a reasonable layer if that's a mistake.
That wasn't even KEGseth's fault.
It wasn't KEGseth's fault.
If we go with their narrative,
it was very clearly just like a mistake, and this guy accidentally got into the chat, and it revealed that they were communicating on an inappropriate platform or whatever. This is he like actively chose to give classified information to civilians.
His wife, who was not in the government,
and his lawyer, who's probably not in the government.
And his lawyer, like why?
Like what does he need to know?
I don't know. The KEGseth stuff is crazy, and he's just totally drunk as he takes these interviews.
Yeah. There was that brief moment where it's like there were rumors that they were looking for a new defense secretary, and then Trump's like, no, he's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the guy. He's doing a great job.
He might still just randomly get fired some point next week.
Dude, I hope so. That'd be so sick.
But yeah, that would be awesome. But we'll see what happens there. And another extra story, bullying works.
It does.
You might have noticed past 2 weeks we haven't really been talking about Elon Musk, and that's because he's sort of retreating from public view.
Yeah.
And there's some rumors circulating in the Trump White House that Elon Musk has been planning his exit for a little while now.
I think he said
specifically
himself,
because of the left-wing mockery that he's received.
I think he said himself like he's going to be significantly stepping down from Doge and focusing on Tesla because he's been getting bullied by the online left.
And he does need to focus on Tesla.
Buddy, it's not going to stop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no. I will forever remember what you've done.
You did.
I have not. I never rode with Elon Musk. I never thought he was cool.
Yeah.
I never fucked with him. I knew from the beginning that he was a sort of like right-wing adjacent weirdo. But a lot of people now have been radicalized against him, and they're not going to forget.
They're not going to forget.
Yeah. He's not going to repair his image.
I hope it keeps tanking Tesla stock. Well, I guess maybe not for the regular people that are invested in it. I hope it gets to the point where the board of directors eats him.
The only people I really feel bad for in this equation is the people who bought like a Tesla years and years ago because they wanted to like feel good about buying an EV and like, you know, contribute some good to society.
Or even just like the people who bought a Tesla like a year and a half ago, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of feel bad for those folks, but like,
that's tough.
You'll be all right.
That's tough.
You'll be all right. But bullying works, and always keep that in mind. Another extra story was, there's been a lot of controversy around this one. I don't really know what to say about it other than, like, of course this is happening. But RFK Jr. just recently announced that he's going to be, like, ordering people to investigate the external causes of autism, and he will have a report on those environmental factors by, like, September or something. I'll just say
it's going to be vaccines.
Usually, well, yeah,
he's going to lie and say it's vaccines.
But usually when you like have some scientific research happening, you don't decide what the cause is before it's done.
Yeah.
Like he's deciding, I will have results in September and there are external causes to autism. And I will tell you what they are. He's like deciding what the results are before he's even started. Like, what if they aren't external causes? What if it's fully genetic, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Or like, I don't fucking know, but like, you've already decided it has to be external factors.
And like, research like this takes like years.
Yeah.
Years and years.
Yeah.
And none of it has bore out the conclusions that he constantly pushes.
Oh, yeah, we have lots of research that it is not vaccines. Actually. Yeah, exactly.
It's like still like a working like field right now, man. And he also said he wants to create a registry of like people with autism.
He's literally going to be sending people with ADHD to camps. Like
that's what I'm saying. Like
plan.
It's like, why are we're taking like this? Like I don't want to say like more seriously, but we're going down like why are we making a list of people with autism, and why are we ignoring the measles outbreaks across the country?
Yeah, exactly.
Like the priorities here are a little bit crazy.
Yeah, measles is on a comeback.
It seems like RFK solely exists to like. Trump saw that he lost suburban white women, in 2020? And RFK exists to appeal to the suburban white women that spend too much time on Facebook.
Yeah, he definitely is like the health nut. Like the schizophrenic health nut population is what RFK captures, I think. Yes. And the thing RFK does is he rails against vaccines very publicly. He has for years and years. And then when there's like an outbreak of measles, for example, or something major, he'll be like, yeah, maybe take the vaccine for that.
He said, make it, but it's your choice.
Yeah. Exactly. So he'll like subtly acknowledge when there's a health crisis that you can take the vaccine and it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But then other time he is doing this like weird pseudoscientific thing where he's arguing against vaccines because they cause autism or something like that. Remember there was that story of him like hiking on a trail and he told a woman like, "Oh, you got your kid there? Don't get him vaccinated." Fucking freak, dude. This whole administration is stocked with freaks.
That's a beautiful baby you have there. I hope you do not violate them.
Yeah.
By having the needle.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ,
yeah,
bro.
No, he's terrible.
No, there's also the thing he's been railing with this like line that's like, oh, these kids with autism, they're never gonna live alone. They'll never pay taxes and they'll never write a poem. That's like the line he's been repeating over and over on these like media appearances. And it's like, does he think everybody with autism is like nonverbal? And living in like a group home?
I guess so. I have friends with autism that certainly pay taxes.
I was going to say, certainly pay taxes.
They're upset. Like, it makes them very sad.
Live alone. And it's like, what about the autistic people that like do speed runs? You know what I'm
exactly.
saying? Like, these are very productive members of society. What about the autistic people whose special interest engineering and then go and build fucking planes, dog? There are autistic people that are way more productive than he's ever been.
Isn't Elon Musk autistic a little
Yes.
bit? Yeah. Like his own like countrymen.
Yeah, you can be autistic and have 3 like fake companies that you fake run and also ruin the government. You can do a lot when you're autistic.
Exactly.
Like it's almost like they're regular people who can do their own things. Like
RFK is pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just boomer.
Just great.
Boomer nut. And for this last little extra, I want to leave you all with this gem that I found.
Excellent.
I think it's the Indiana Lieutenant Governor.
Okay.
Posted a video. I don't know where this video got posted to, but I do know that I need to show you all this video.
It's a need.
It's a need. This shit is crazy. It's the GOP lieutenant governor of Indiana making a claim.
Okay.
Making a claim.
Let's hear it.
And then defending that claim.
I would like to share with you the Three-Fifths Compromise is not a pro-discrimination compromise. It was not a pro-discrimination or a slave-driving compromise that the founders made. It was actually just the opposite. It was a compromise that the North made with the South. At the time, there were basically 13 independent nations. They had not really created a constitution. They were sort of a European Union-esque nation. And they were saying to the pro-slave states, hey, if you want to count your slaves to have representation, more representation in Congress, we're not going to let you do that, because they knew that that would codify things like slavery into our nation. And
it literally did.
Exactly, yeah.
The North said, you can't do that. So what they came back to the South and they said, fine, if you want to count your property, your slaves, as whole people, we're going to count our property. We're going to count our tables. We're going to count our chairs. We're going to count all the stuff that we have in our house. And the South said, well, you can't do that. And they said, well, you're doing it with your property. We're doing it with our property. So what they did is they came up with a three-fifths compromise. They said, you will only get 3/5 of a vote when it comes to your slave. And what that did, it actually limited the number of pro-slave representatives in Congress by 40%. This was a great move. And how did we get to this place? We got to this place because of DEI in education. That's how you had Senate Democrats who were getting up talking about the 3/5 compromise like it was some sort of terrible thing in our past. It was not. It actually was the exact opposite.
Bro came out as pro 3/5 compromise.
Oh my God, brother.
He said the North argued that if we let you count slaves, as for representation in Congress in the Senate, that it would codify slavery. And then so they codified slavery, but just a little bit less. So that's a great thing.
Yeah,
guys, it's like we're just the spirit of compromise is a good thing, and not that we codified in the Constitution something completely immoral.
Yeah, and to act like the 3/5 compromise was not a concession to the institution of slavery in the South is completely ahistorical.
That's quite literally part of what a compromise is. It's a concession.
Yeah, exactly. And the 3/5 compromise tilted political power towards the South in such a way that basically locked in permanent electoral victories for the South in terms of the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Because it boosted the amount of representation they had, while those people that were boosting the representation couldn't fucking vote. They weren't citizens. Coming out as pro 3/5 compromise is genuinely fucking insane. Is this the political environment today?
No, that's what I mean. The framing on this is just absolutely crazy too. Wokeness and DEI told you the 3/5 compromise is bad, but it was actually good because they made a compromise. What are we doing here? Worshipping the altar of compromise?
Oh my God.
For no reason? Oh no, you guys, we just codified slavery a little bit less, so that's good because we compromised about it. And the woke DEI initiative will tell you that it was bad. Motherfucker, the 3/5 compromise was bad because slavery was bad.
Yes.
The radical left will tell you that slavery is bad, but look what cotton production in the South brought to America. Motherfucker, that's bad.
Slavery was codified in multiple spots of the U.S. Constitution. It wasn't just the 3/5 compromise. There was a few other major components of the Constitution that allowed for the institution of slavery.
And it continues.
Yeah. And it's still in there.
It's still in there.
Yeah.
It's right there, clear as day.
Yeah.
You can't be a slave unless accused of a crime or some shit like that.
Yeah. Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah. Banger.
Holy moly.
I don't understand how we got here. I don't understand why you can get, that's high school coach history teacher level shit right there. Football coach history teacher level shit.
Wholly unrelated, but also his pants were too tight.
Way too tight, brother.
Not important or germane to the subject being discussed, but
in a way it is.
Bad fashion sense.
In a way it is. I mean? It's bad fashion sense. It leads to other things as well.
But what possesses, I understand that racist views are held throughout the country.
Yeah.
But what possesses you to make a video explaining this?
It's that's what happens when colorblind policies win.
Yeah.
That is genuinely what happens when you never look at any event through a racial historical lens, right? Yeah. Because then you are fundamentally incapable of seeing the fucking depravity that underlied the compromise in of itself. Mm-hmm. You can't look at the 3/5 compromise and say, oh, this was good because the North was actually able to get less representation for the South because of this. Just a little bit less representation for the South, even though they got more in codified slavery into the Constitution.
And to be clear, he makes this argument about property and property taxes and counting the votes of property when I think it was Jefferson argued in favor of the three-fifths. No, it would have been Madison argued in favor of the three-fifths compromise, like in the Federalist Papers.
Yeah.
The argument was that the three-fifths rule was good because they wouldn't be encouraged to inflate the number of slaves that they have because of like how the math would work out. But they also wouldn't be encouraged to deflate it because of like how taxes would work out and stuff like that. So three-fifths is like the perfect balancing. Nowhere in Madison's argument is he considering the humanity of slaves.
Exactly. Yeah. No.
Like, at no point.
That's why it's like you can only come at this from like a post-race perspective.
Yeah.
That just like doesn't exist. This is why we unironically need like DEI.
Yeah.
This is why we need CRT.
Yeah. The argument for Madison was like, if you inflate the number to get more votes, you pay more in taxes on the property. If you deflate it to pay less taxes, you get less votes. So three-fifths is like perfect or whatever. But again, he's at no point in the Federalist Papers or anywhere like in the debates during the fucking Constitutional Convention where they like, maybe slaves should just be citizens and like, not enslaved.
That's what is bad about this.
Yes.
That's why we look at all of these events, all of these things around slavery and say that's bad because the institution of slavery was bad.
Dare I say, bad things are bad.
Things are bad.
It's not tough, people.
It's not hard to contend with them on those grounds. Like and just to get out there and like set up the camera and post a video too.
That's what I'm perplexed about. like I understand. I wouldn't say there's nuances in like a class about history to talk about how did this come about? Why did the founding fathers think this was a good idea? Right.
Yeah.
Like you can talk about that. You can read the documents and in the books about it and whatnot. But I don't know why in like a TikTok format, 2-minute video, bro felt the need to explain why he thinks not only the Three-Fifths Compromise was a good move by the founders, but why it's good today.
Well, because when a historian argues about those things, talks about the Three-Fifths Compromise in like a very nuanced way and goes through and looks at arguments made, they're doing so in service of understanding what motivated the people of the past.
Yeah.
That historian would not go and say, oh no, you shouldn't not think that, or you shouldn't think that the Three-Fifths Compromise is bad. They would say, yeah, the Three-Fifths Compromise was obviously bad because slavery was bad. But this is what the founders were thinking when they came up with this.
Yeah, this is their argument, and their arguments are flawed. There are many ways to point out why the arguments are flawed, mostly because they didn't think slaves were like people deserving of rights. Like, isn't it in the Dred Scott decision that like black people could never be citizens? Like, never ever will they be?
Probably, yeah.
Some shit like that.
Yeah.
Like, crazy. I don't know why people. There's many reasons to get in front of a camera, folks.
Yep. We do it every week.
Every week we make the decision.
Twice a week we'll be getting in front of the camera.
About to be making the decision twice a week at minimum to get in front of the camera. And this is just not one of them.
It's not.
Keep this one to yourself, dog. I don't think the mask has fallen such that you can make an argument for slavery just yet.
Just yet. Yeah.
We're getting there, though. Maybe he's the reason we'll get there.
True. They're pushing the bounds.
Yeah.
It all started with Ron DeSantis saying that slavery was not wholly evil. With Ron DeSantis saying 2 years ago that there are some good things that came out of slavery.
But I don't. What is the DEI piece about it? Because he connects it to DEI. I feel like that's sort of like a.
Should I just pull up the end of the video again?
I feel like he's throwing like a flashbang in the argument. You know what I mean? Like he's just to disorient me. He brings up DEI.
Let me see. Let's play like the last 30 seconds.
Okay.
Again.
The South said, well, you can't do that. And they said, well, you're doing it with your property. We're doing it with our property.
Of course.
So what they did is they came up with a three-fifths compromise. They said, you will only get 3/5 of a vote when it comes to your slave. And what that did, it actually limited the number of pro-slave representatives in Congress by 40%. This was a great move.
I don't know where he got that number.
Still
and
inflated
how did
them.
we get to this place? We got to this place because of DEI in education.
He got that number because 40% would be the missing 2/5 of the 3/5. Which that's not how that would work.
But the Three-Fifths Compromise didn't limit political power by 3/5.
No, exactly. That's just not how the math fundamentally works. Like there were also white people that were like non-slaves that were counted in the census that would determine representation. The 3/5 only supplied to the specific population of slaves.
It gave Southern states a boost in political representation, even though they couldn't vote.
Just like a little bit less of a boost than if they were fully counted, right? So it's like that's just not how the math works there. Very interesting, gentlemen.
Congress by 40%. This was a great move.
Great move.
And how did we get to this place? We got to this place because of DEI in education. And that's why you had the Senate Democrats who were getting up talking about the Three-Fifths Compromise like it was some sort of terrible thing in our past. It was not. It actually was the exact opposite.
Buddy, the Three-Fifths Compromise was bad because slavery was bad. The Three-Fifths Compromise was bad because these people were not treated as people. And
so now I realize now that the DEI thing that he invokes is just a flashbang. Because there's no point being made. He just says we got to this point because of DEI. Not because we had like a lucid analysis of our historical
DEI is not even, like, he's confusing his own buzzwords too.
Yeah.
DEI is not even the education thing. That's CRT, buddy. Come on,
Yeah,
keep up.
come on, man. Yo, how does whatever. I'm not going to try to parse this anymore.
You can't. It's fundamentally unparsable.
It's imparseable.
It's imparseable.
And with that imparseable sort of a piece of content, that's really what that was. He's a content creator.
We got to give special thanks to the people who parse through our content on a weekly basis.
And I hope we make it parsable.
I hope we make
easily
it parsable.
parsable.
Yeah, I hope we're not out there like that guy.
That's crazy.
So I got to give a special thanks to Gaden Kraut, Lord Tau the Radiant, Chris the Postman, Chrissy Beck, Dylan B, Mike Chaplinsky, Omar Zuno, Clayton DeFeg, Mark Yeager, Caleb Joy, Rich Toro, Tari, Fergalaki, Max Vasquez, Jacob Rogers, Colton Mooberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Muzzy, Bagel Burrito, Cincy Alex, Joe Stenstrom, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Sam 601, Colleen Cutsfer, Yook, Jennifer DeVoe, Big Bird Titty, Crawfish, and Bennett Bennington III, Alexia Benanti, Nietzsche, Big Booty Beatdown, Sam Maloney, Two-Headed Boy, Ben Shapiro's Boyfriend, Ted Cruz's Boy Toy, Dictator Jace, Luke O'Shea, Cucker Tarlson, Danielle Jackson, The Word of Microsoft, Jennifer Science, Aaron and his Gundams, Darth Father, Tailored for Content, Corey Chambers, Ellie N, Devin Hatchard, Retro Mondo, Emma the Dude Slayer, Veronica aka V, Rexon, Ash Smith, The Grotler, Flower Clown, Beetlebugs, Murder in a Trench Coat, Lonnie Rogers, Slavic and Sapphic, Casey Lynn Kelly, Snake Eyes, In Hope of Giants, AK Gon, Zach Lantian, Info Russell, Austin Greif, Marcus Corbett, Caleb Roper, Taylor Renslot, Cammy, Tylen Freeman, Tay, Isaac Hodges, Madeline C, Kayla Lowe, Anna Valinic, KCC, Say Yes to Wes,
August, Particular Pikmin, Sir Capalot, Jeff Signs, Howard the Duck, Brennan is Egg, JR, Froggy Gumdrop, Jackie Boy, Shameless, Coherent Babbles, MJ is Sharp, Michaela Muncie, The Wallace 3000, Jared Finch, Tactical Snowflake, Son of Ander, Vanilla Bryce, Chris T, Kishan Lala, Amanda R, Hanky Panky, Tyler J, Damian Blues, Ashley White, Particulon, Memfrez, Lauren, Uncrasmatic Boar, Sasquatch, Rhonda Stiletto, Midwest Marxist, Joe the Mailman, Gary from West Michigan, Shawnee GG, Juniper Not Jupiter, Stack Crabs, I Crowley, Urban Peach, Lord of Forlorn, Holt Forsyth, Kevin Kasaya, Booty Snakes, Erica, Krusty Krab, Dew Fairy, Chilceratops, Austin Lima, Lane Waltz, Azim Fitta Hussein, Gorgeous Girl Mukes, Brooklyn G, Noverk the Dastardly, Goldthorn, Addie Book, Merlin, John from Houston, Anaya, Cryobonky, Sergeant Pookie, Connor Nix, Jordan T, Hoodie, Kim Kitsuragi, Rose Grimm, Kristen, Jamie the Young Extremist, Jack the Heathen, Archer W, Evan Mingo, AJ Torres, Elo Nico, Jake Hall, Seth Schmidt, Daniel Stock, Noah Sajas, Majo What, Ultra the Dragon, Mercy Boku, Dick Cheney and 6-Inch Heels, Luke Wechter, Henry Kraggles, Tristan Ringsmith, Yaya, and my mom. Thank you all so much.
So much.
For supporting the show on Patreon.
Yes.
Couldn't do it without you.
Could not. And we welcome you into Hiddo era too.
Oh, Hiddo Renaissance.
My. Have a great week.
We'll see you next week.